A notification screen appeared with the text Trial Tower. The 100th floor trial was loading, followed by the appearance of several angels. Below was the silhouette of a man, accompanied by a lightning sickle. Persistent as a leech, aren't you? It's pointless to struggle. I'm telling you now. Below was the silhouette of a man, accompanied by a lightning sickle. Persistent as a leech, aren't you? It's pointless to struggle. I'm telling you now. Below was the silhouette of a man, accompanied by a lightning sickle. Persistent as a leech, aren't you? It's pointless to struggle. I'm telling you now. What's the point of a player ranking war? Jinnu God is going to be number 1 anyway. I heard Jinnu is free to play. How the hell is he doing that? That's just the class of our number 1 Jinnu God. I heard he just broke the time attack record for the daily dungeon again. Is Jinnu God hacking the game? How could he take down the Chaos Ghost Dragon in just 47 seconds? Don't insult him. Honestly, becoming one of Jinnu God's summons might be faster. There, I set superhuman records and became a legend in the game. Comments from the top 5 emperors appeared on the screen. Player conquered up to floor 70 of the Trial Tower. White Heaven, hey, is Big Brother Jinnu busy? He must be busy conquering floor 99, right? Reading this, Jinnu mumbled to himself. I've already passed floor 99. What's going on? Is there a problem? Jinnu muttered to himself. That's right. Jinnu is the one who makes the top-tier players bow in respect. But sorry, I'm busy right now. On his face now was a somewhat regretful smile. Just clear this last round, and I'll delete the game. On his face now was a somewhat regretful smile. Just clear this last round, and I'll delete the game. Being addicted to games for 10 years, to the point of dropping out of college, with no stable job like others. Even though my parents didn't say anything on the outside, they must be very sad on the inside. So I decided to scrap this trash game and restart my life. I'm 24 years old already. I need to live properly. So for the goal of restarting his life, Jinnu's eyes became more serious, and he wanted to give Jinnu God a truly complete ending. The angels up above were preparing to attack all at once. I'll just clear this last round and delete the game for good. At this moment, Jinnu prepared to counterattack. The summoning board, a list of summons, appeared. Inventory. The top 5 emperors on one side kept discussing. Player conquered up to floor 70 of the Trial Tower. White Heaven, it seems Big Brother is very busy. Top 5 emperors, second-ranked player, he doesn't usually look at the summoning board, just wait a little longer and see. The summon used was the ultimate technique, White Whale, accompanied by a notification from the system. White Whale has been summoned. The comments section kept buzzing with chatter. Top 5 emperors, second-ranked player Rachel. But if he clears floor 100 this time, the angels will launch another attack. Below is a comment from the top 5 emperors, second-ranked player Rachel. It's been exactly 10 years, right? Jinnu was completely focused on the battle in front of him. He quickly erected a wall to block those attacks. Jinnu's face was extremely tense, the comments section becoming noisier and noisier. Top 5 emperors, Jinnu God is crazy, truly terrifying. Great. I can't quit this game because I want to see him clear floor 100. And the angels kept launching attacks. On the surface, Jinnu didn't show any emotion. However, every move was executed very decisively. Jinnu, on this side, was still using the White Whale summon, and on his face now was a look of confidence. The comments section continued to pop up many more lines of text. Top 5 emperors, GRE is not unworthy of being Jinnu God, the player who conquered up to floor 70 of the Trial Tower, White Heaven. But the light appearing from behind made Jinnu turn his head. Has everyone read the notification board? In front of him now was a giant monster. Top 5 Emperors Moscow. Clearing floor 100 will open a new world. It attacked almost immediately. Jinnu's eyes widened in surprise. However, he still agilely summoned the Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon, as soon as it appeared, used its water attribute ability to fight against that monster. Meanwhile, those on the outside were still discussing this battle. Top 5 Emperors. Player conquered up to floor 70 of the Trial Tower. White Heaven. The game structure will change. What does that mean? Top 5 Emperors. Second-ranked player. Rachel. It was probably written for fun. Even management probably didn't think anyone could clear floor 100. The space was violently distorted in a blink of an eye. Jinnu widened his eyes when witnessing the scale of the battle. Top 5 emperors. Player conquered up to floor 70 of the trial tower. White heaven, what if the world really changes? A declaration was subsequently made. Reality transformed into the world of the summoner. The very next second, a shocking explosion occurred. Jinnu's screen showed the message. Trial tower floor 100 successfully conquered. Unable to suppress his excitement, Jinnu shouted aloud. Cleared it. Passers-by looked at him with a judgmental gaze. He finally succeeded, and they even muttered, "What's wrong with that guy? He must be crazy." However, only Jinnu understood. Jinnu God finally conquered all 100 floors. Now goodbye to the game. He started wanting to show off. All right, before deleting the game, I have to show it off to other gamers. Unexpectedly, at this moment, the people around were wearing surprised expressions. So Jinnu was also drawn by the blinding light. In the sky now was a giant notification. Trial tower floor 100 successfully conquered. Everyone present had to exclaim, "What is that?" The next notification read, "Beta test ended." Jinnu started to feel bewildered. Why is the in-game screen appearing over there? Following the notification, there was the appearance of a series of red papers. A few people quickly grabbed them. What is this? A notification appeared. Tear up the summoning book. They only felt interested in what was happening. Or was this some kind of event? Let's try tearing it. And then they immediately tore that red paper. Jinnu, standing to the side, couldn't stop them in time. No, if you tear it. The red paper was torn in half. It immediately exploded, making the user jump in surprise. Another notification appeared. A new world has been opened. Jinnu was so terrified his face went dark when witnessing this scene. A series of monsters from somewhere flooded in. While he was busy muttering to himself, a vehicle was almost touching him. No way. Only when the light flashed from behind did Jinnu realize something was wrong. A loud noise rang out, followed by the panic of the people around. They surrounded Jinnu and shouted aloud. "Someone got hit by a car here. Someone help him." He lay alone on the ground, blood streaming from his head. 119. Call 119 quickly. In his heart, Jinnu was thinking, "Damn it, this cursed game." The phone on the ground was already cracked. I don't know how much time has passed. News sounds echoed in the hospital room. Next news. Amid the official start of the International Player League, South Korea once again left a regrettable result, standing at the bottom of the rankings. Jinnu's hand moved slightly. Regarding this, the association insisted on needing to mobilize more high-level summons. But some experts argue that the national budget wasn't enough to cover that cost. This made his mother startle. She almost dropped the knife to the ground. Honey, call the doctor quickly." Voices clearly showed relief. Jinnu is awake. The sky outside was still strangely blue. Inside the hospital room, Jinnu's parents were explaining what had happened. His eyes widened in surprise. "Just waking up, I heard some truly shocking news. First, it had been 3 years since the day I had the accident. Second, the game scenery turned into reality that I saw before fainting. The door popped open and a pebble golem walked in. This is my father's summon, Pebble Golem." Only then could Jinnu confirm it wasn't dream. Jinnu's father continued to explain, "It helps me organize goods at the express warehouse. It's quite useful." He stared at it blankly. That E-rank summon his dad's? And the third shocking news. The TV was playing a news segment about Rachel. In that situation, players around the world simultaneously affirmed, "To conquer the trial tower, we must find Jinnu God of South Korea at all costs." This statement caused a huge wave of suspicion in public opinion. Rachel, the #1 ranked player in the world. We, the 5 emperors, are still waiting for him. If he appears, it will be the moment the world is shaken once again. The truth is that the whole world is looking for Jinnu God, and that's me. He looked at the image of the girl on the TV and thought, plus, that name can't be mistaken. The identity of that girl was confirmed by him to be Rachel of the top 5 emperors. "Do you want to start the tutorial? Yes or no?" Jinnu's mother suddenly spoke up. "Jinnu, Mom knows you're very surprised. You don't need to start the tutorial yet. Just rest." However, he hurriedly denied it. "No, Mom." He smiled and explained further. "I need to adapt quickly. My body is feeling better, don't worry." But in his head, he had already calculated everything clearly. Even though he had nothing in his hands right now and didn't know how the world had changed, what was so difficult about that? especially for this game. I'm confident I'll become a world top-tier player. Everything that happened afterward was very simple. After being discharged and returning home, Jinwoo was sitting in front of the screen. I started researching this world, where the BOS game had become reality. Information searched included everything from duels and dungeon expeditions to the trial tower. Every system in the game was now manifested in real life. After that, he concluded that now that 3 years had passed, everyone seemed to have gradually adapted to living alongside the summons. Jinwoo just stood up from his chair and mumbled, "Even if that's the case, they can't possibly know as much about them as I do." And then he was excited to operate the system board. Well, it's about time. Several notifications kept appearing. Do you want to open the inventory? No. Let's start, shall we? The tutorial phase was started. Very quickly, Jinwoo moved to another place. Just as I predicted, I knew there wouldn't be anyone around here. I didn't expect to have to find such a deserted place, just because I couldn't predict what kind of summon would appear. A series of tutorials appeared continuously. Tutorial reward: low-level summoning scroll X2. Warning: recommended to use outdoors. Jinwoo looked at the red paper in his hand and could only sigh. Now everything feels so real. He mumbled to himself, "Please, let me summon something decent, because even for me, Beck Jinwoo, known as the top one, if I had to start with trash summons, I would be finished." But BOS is a cursed gacha game famous for its extremely miserable drop rates. Stats can be summarized as follows: low-level summoning scroll, D1%, E5%, F94%. Grades range from S to F with extremely low success rates. And from this low-level summoning scroll, you have to overcome a 1% rate just to get a D rank item. He didn't rush to tear it, instead starting to pray, "God, please, please, please give me something I can actually use." Jinwoo's face was extremely serious. "Not D rank. I'd be satisfied even if I got an E rank, as long as it's a useful E rank." Finally, he proceeded to tear that paper. "Please." A system notification appeared. Using low-level summoning scroll. Jinwoo carefully read that line, constantly wondering in his head, did it succeed? Thinking back, how would the summon things appear? Unexpectedly, at this moment, the paper suddenly exploded. This made Jinwoo feel quite surprised. What the hell is this? Information lines from the system started appearing. Player Beck Jinwoo has received the EX rank Wind Spirit Summon. Golden Light along with Jamba was what he received. Jinwoo's eyes widened in disbelief to the point of mumbling. EX rank? Does a grade like that even exist? On this side, he was lazily rubbing his eyes. The girl was so surprised she had to shout, "What the hell?" Afterward, she looked excitedly at the person in front of her. "Oh my god, was I really just summoned? That's insane. How long has it been since this happened?" Jinwoo, on this side, was constantly wondering, what is this? Why can a summon talk? However, very quickly he guessed. Wait a moment, a name was uttered by Jinwoo. "Are you Ramba?" Ramba hurriedly corrected him. "No, I am a wind spirit." But very quickly she realized. Wait, what? The only person who used to call me by that name. Could it be? Ramba's face gradually became more excited. "Don't tell me you are Jinwoo God." Afterward, she lunged at Jinwoo with excitement. "Jinwoo God, do you know how much I missed you?" Jinwoo just gently replied, "Of course." In his heart, he was constantly calculating. I remember now. E-rank Wind Spirit Summon. Speaking of the fact that if you know how to utilize hidden mechanics and equip the right types of ancient scripts, the result is that she will become a god-tier unit with the ability to increase attack speed exponentially. Because we have been sticking together for a long time since I was a newbie, I even nicknamed her Ramba. Was she deleted from the game in a patch in the first year? He looked at the information board in front of him and thought, what was the reason? Was her usage restricted because they discovered a serious balance-breaking exploit? Do you know how furious I was when they deleted the summon that I had spent a whole year nurturing? What the hell is going on here? The information itself contained Grade 1 Wind Spirit, Race, Fairy, S rank, currently quarantined. Quarantined due to discovering factors causing imbalance under specific conditions. Possess skill, Wind Pressure, increases attack speed by 3% for a single target summon after each swing of the staff. Jinwoo's eyes widened, mumbling to himself, quarantine status. At this moment, Ramba cried and explained, Suddenly I was dragged to a very strange place. I was locked up and couldn't even escape. Let's never be apart again, Jinna, God, can we? Jinna didn't show pity, but rather roughly pushed her away. Wait a minute, Ramba, a question was posed by him. Locked up? Who quarantined you? Only then did Ramba realize the mistake in her words. Oh, what was it? Only then did Ramba realize the mistake in her words. Oh, what was it? Ramba acted as if she had a headache. It hurts. It hurts so much. My head hurts so much I can't remember anything. Surely some bastard put a restriction on her. Seeing that, Jinnu asked back, Really? Then just tell me what you still remember. She could only seriously reply, Sorry, but I can't reveal much to you. We have been quarantined. Originally, no matter how hard the player tried to summon us, we couldn't leave. Unexpectedly, this made him feel even more confused. Other than you, there are other summons that have been quarantined. Ramba shared sincerely. Because we weren't locked in the same room, I don't know who they are, but surely there are many others. A guess was subsequently made by Jinnu. Perhaps about 10 individuals? 10 individuals. If there were really 10 individuals, he couldn't believe his eyes and thought, Seriously, no way. Because the truth is that 10 summons disappeared after being marked as bugs while I was using them. He started calculating everything. If all those summons were classified as EX rank and quarantined, Ramba chimed in with a comment. I don't know the details either. But anyway, Jinnu God, it seems like we will have a chance every time you tear a summoning scroll. It's also been a long time since I felt the call from a low-level summoning scroll. Looking at the red paper on the ground, Jinnu commented to himself, Isn't that very interesting? Furthermore, do they only react to the scrolls that I tear? His expression became more serious. There is no doubt I am the only one who can summon EX rank items. And then he asked himself, could this be a privilege reserved for someone who conquered floor 100 of the trial tower? Jinnu quickly tore the remaining paper. Using low-level summoning scroll, he muttered to himself while doing it. Could it be that every low-level summoning scroll I tier is set to drop an EX rank item? The summon appeared quickly. Player Beck Jinnu has received the F-rank Hairy Gorilla summon. Jinnu couldn't help but feel disappointed. Probably not. Meanwhile, Ramba was clearly enjoying it. A gorilla, he thought to himself. F-rank? That means the EX rank drop rate is also completely random. This damn trash game. And then he calculated carefully. Then, just as predicted, I will need to tear as many summoning scrolls as possible to increase the rate of receiving EX rank items. After determining his goal, he spoke up. Ramba. She hurriedly turned her head and replied, Jinnu God. A comment was made. From now on, drop the Ju name. Just call me Jinnu. Ramba asked back confused. Why? He didn't rush to explain, but only thought to himself. Because thanks to the 5 emperors, the name Ju has become famous all over the world. The risks were being listed out. Even if my knowledge and experience are superior, I still don't know how this 3-year gap will disadvantage me. Jinnu himself understood clearly that if the information that he possesses EX rank items is leaked, I will only become a target of envy and jealousy. A noise echoing in the forest made several birds fly away. Jinnu also couldn't help but feel surprised. What is that? Why all of a sudden? Both Ramba and the gorilla were equally surprised. What? A notification line appeared in front of Jinnu, advancing to the next stage. Information was quickly clarified. Beginner dungeon has been initialized. Looking at the gate that suddenly appeared, Jinnu mumbled with surprise. What? Right now? His hand clenched tightly with hesitation. Oh damn, do I really have to go in there? It's true that I've conquered countless dungeons before. But, Jinnu quickly concluded, reality is far different from in the game. His teeth ground together. No, calm down. Honestly, I'm feeling very terrified, but I won't have to fight directly. And most importantly, this is just a tutorial dungeon. And then Jinnu turned back to look at the door. Player Beck Jinnu. Now a system notification appeared. Please enter. The 3 of them just entered inside. I need to adapt to this changed reality. Jinnu's face couldn't hide his surprise. His surrounding space changed in a blink of an eye. I just entered a dungeon. Why does it feel so creepy here? A system notification appeared. Player Beck Jinnu. You have entered the beginner dungeon. Jinnu carefully read and calculated to himself. So it has begun. The rule of execution is To participate in combat in the dungeon, you must establish a summoning team. The second notification appeared. The maximum number of summons for each team is 5. Below was an option. Do you want to assign the S-rank Wind Spirit and F-rank Hairy Gorilla to Team 1? Yes/no. At this moment, Jinnu calculated to himself. Usually, to increase the chance of clearing the dungeon, people fill their lineup with all 5 summons. He remembered the time he played the game. Only bringing 2 summons seemed reckless, but with the right strategy, it was entirely possible. Afterward, he pondered the things that had happened. I've run this thousands, tens of thousands of times. In Jinnu's heart, he was calculating. The entire process of clearing the dungeon was already in my head. The options listed were S-rank Wind Spirit and F-rank Hairy Gorilla. Now they will be automatically summoned. He frowned, evaluating to himself. Let's see, the monsters in the tutorial dungeon will definitely be. Unexpectedly, Jinnu's eyes widened when hearing a roar echoing from behind. A system notification appeared. A hungry gray wolf is lurking nearby. Defeat the wolf and escape the cave. His face became more serious. F-rank Gray Wolf. His feet subsequently started to radiate golden light. It became a shield protecting Jinnu. A protective shield has been created for the player. He continued to calculate carefully. So the system's protection for the player from the boss is applied perfectly. But because this is reality, suddenly a red notification appeared. Warning. You will die if attacked by a summon without an active protective shield. If I fail, it won't just end with a game over line. The gray wolf had a threatening expression and slowly moved forward. At this moment, Jinnu ordered, Gorilla. However, the way it moved made him feel extremely disappointed. Jinnu turned pale when making a comment. It's too slow. However, that didn't affect his mood for too long. But I already expected this. Ramba, she received the order and lunged forward. Here, the skill used was Wind Pressure. Swing the staff to increase attack speed for the summon. The gorilla was quickly buffed. It was momentarily stunned by this, however, it quickly regained its momentum and powerfully lunged forward. On one side, Jinnu commented contentedly, Great, just as expected of Ramba. The gray wolf also aggressively lunged up. In Jinnu's heart, he was thinking, in the game, was that thing also that big? It looks much more terrifying here. He was confident in his lineup. There's no way the hairy gorilla will actually lose, right? Jinnu's line of thought continued according to the data he knew. That was completely impossible, but he also cautiously considered other possibilities. If there's a 1 in a million chance, reality presents an unforeseen incident. A bloody scene unfolded in front of his eyes. The gray wolf managed to bite the gorilla. It lost its balance and fell. Jinnu immediately shouted, Ramba, she shouted back. Ouch. I swung as hard as I could. Wind enveloped and supported the gorilla's attack. The situation was reversed in just one punch. The gray wolf rolled to the ground. Jinnu just waited for that moment and immediately ordered. That's it. Ramba quickly unleashed the next move. The gorilla, under her support, became even more powerful. He punched the gray wolf directly, then continuously unleashed a flurry of blows. The surrounding space became nothing but a layer of swirling white dust. Jinnu and Ramba both had their eyes wide open as they witnessed this scene. They looked at the dead gray wolf lying motionless on the ground. At this moment, the gorilla roared, and Ramba excitedly cheered. We won. Several system notifications appeared simultaneously. Dungeon cleared. Rewards. Low-level strength, core X2. Jinnu finally felt somewhat relieved. I survived. As the afternoon drifted by, a voice rang out full of delight. Thanks. See you next time. Several banknotes were tucked into an envelope. That was Ah Jin's excitement. This is truly amazing. I just earned 200,000 won today, didn't I? She is Ah Jin, Jinnu's younger sister. Speaking of 3 years ago, when the world changed, I also had a new profession, which was that of a rune farming player, mainly running low-level dungeons. My job is to make a profit by selling runes to potential players. Ah Jin's train of thought continued. After my brother had his accident and the family's financial situation became difficult, I decided to become a player, as if by a miracle. While in a dungeon, an intermediate summoner's skill book dropped. And from that book, with a drop rate of only 1%, I received a C-rank summon. She glanced at the bag she was carrying on her shoulder. I've been truly very lucky thanks to this C-rank night elf. I've been able to earn money steadily by farming runes. The phone rang. The caller was her older brother Jinu. Is Big Brother calling? Ajin quickly picked up the phone. Hello, Big Brother. Have you been discharged from the hospital? On the other end of the line, Jinu's hurried voice rang out. Yeah, I'm out. But Ajin, Dad told me you're out selling runes. This remark made her slightly indignant. Selling runes? Call me a rune farming player. How could you use such a vulgar term? That scream made Jinu hurriedly try to coax her. You scare me. Okay, fine. Rune farming. Anyway, do you know where the general center is? Dad said you know. Hearing this, Ajin couldn't help but be surprised. The general center? That, she softly explained. Of course it's located in the player area. The truth is, when the trial towers appeared all over the world, everyone needed a space to manage everything related to their summons. That's how the player zones were born. Speaking further, not only are there diverse dungeons, but also the General Center, Enhancement Center, and many other places. Everything can now be handled right around the tower. The two of them quickly arranged to meet at a coffee shop. Ajin frowned, beginning the conversation. You know that Jamsil Tower and Howney Tower have turned into trial towers, right? She presented it neither fast nor slow. Depending on each country, the situation will be very different. But in South Korea, trial towers only appeared at those two locations. Therefore, the player zones you're looking for are only there too. Hearing this, Jinu replied, so that's how it is. However, his face was still contemplative. Still, if these facilities are to serve the conquest of the trial towers, it is understandable that they were built nearby. The topic was suddenly changed by Ajin. By the way, brother, what rank summon did you get? Irank. Jinu gently replied. 1 E rank and 1 F rank. Hearing this, she couldn't help but be surprised. Really? E rank only has an appearance rate of about 5%. However, he somewhat evaded it. Is that so? Must be because I'm lucky. Sorry, little sister. That was just a lie. A request was subsequently made. Anyway, I'll need your help. I want to adapt to this system as quickly as possible. He didn't forget to promise. Later I'll give you some pocket money. Ajin asked back, teasing slightly. Even though I earn much more money than you? Big brother, Jinu just gently replied. Little sister, you can't predict what the future will be like. Who knows? Maybe I'll become the greatest player in the world. But she completely didn't believe in that. Keep dreaming. Ajin continued to add. Boasting that you'll become the next Rachel or Genos is easy. Brother, people like that are already the chosen ones. Her words were cautionary. They're all geniuses. People like us can't become like them. Jinu just softly replied, Is that so? Next, he stood up and asked, I understand. So lead the way for me. On Jinu's face, now, was an excited smile. He wanted to see with his own eyes what a player zone looks like. The place they headed toward was an extremely modern building. The building they were heading toward was extremely prominent. On the way, Jinu couldn't help but feel curious. Appa, you said you just pulled a summon. What did you pull? Jinu replied, neither fast nor slow. Wind Spirit. Hearing this, she became even more curious and asked again, Wind Spirit? I've never heard of it. Let me see. However, he flatly refused. What? Dream on. Why do you want to see it? This dismissive attitude annoyed Ajin. You stingy person. Why? We're not strangers. What do you lose by letting me see? Hearing this, Jinu made an offer. Then let me see yours first. Ajin couldn't help but be surprised. Mine, she proudly took out her summon. Fine, don't be too shocked. This expression made him somewhat curious as well. What on earth does that kid have that makes her so confident? What appeared was a C-rank dark elf. Jinu turned to stone almost immediately. This attitude made Ajin so angry she had to ask back. What kind of half-hearted reaction is that? Appa might not know, but anything from C-rank and up is considered aristocratic goods. Hearing this explanation, Jinu indifferently replied. Really? He continued to observe the elf, thinking to himself, Give me a break. Aristocratic my foot. This is the kind of C rank that's only seen in dungeons, usually just turned into EXP fodder at the general store. And then Jinu spoke to the elf. Dark elf, can you speak Korean? Hello, This action made the other two feel puzzled. Jin wore a judgmental expression and asked back, "What are you doing?" "Hello." "Ah, can't you hear me?" Jinu explained, neither fast nor slow. "So what do you see me doing?" "I'm just greeting it and intending to ask the summon that my younger sister is so proud of to take good care of itself." The more she listened, the more speechless she felt with him. "Greeting my foot. How can a summon talk?" This new information surprised Jinu. They can't talk. In his head, he remembered his first meeting with Ramba. "Do you know how much I missed you, my lord?" Jinu couldn't help but wonder. But little Ramba spoke during the first meeting. He suspiciously asked back, "Wait, are summons inherently unable to talk?" Jin used an even more judgmental expression when replying. "Whoever said summons can talk?" But Jinu was busy remembering Ramba's mischief. "No, well, that's true. But because Ramba spoke, I thought all humanoid summons could talk now as part of a reality patch. I know Ramba is a special case. I even remember how she speaks. Jinu-sama did a good job, didn't he?" At this moment, Jin requested, "Now show me Appa's summon." Unexpectedly, Jinu refused once again. "Leave it for later." This attitude surprised her to the point of raising her voice. "What? Why? I already showed you mine." Jinu repeated once again, "I said I'll show you later. It's best not to attract attention right now. In a while, I have to be careful when talking to Ramba." He added an urge, "Lead the way." Although sulking, Jin complied. "Such a scammer. Wait for me." Jinu's face couldn't hide his surprise when witnessing the scene in front of him. The place where they stopped was crowded with people and summons. "Is this really Jamsil World?" Jin walked ahead and softly explained. "That's right. When the trial tower appeared, the company demolished this whole area." The more Jinu heard, the more curious he felt. "What?" She frowned and replied as if it were obvious. "Why? Who wants to play next to that gloomy tower? This place is no longer a land of dreams and hope." Jinu widened his eyes and asked back, "Isn't that even more stimulating? A land of adventure and stimulation." Then he was questioned by Jin, "What kind of stimulation involves dying?" "Dungeons have overgrown right in the middle of Jamsil. Who's coming to play anymore?" Only then did he reluctantly agree. "I guess that's true." Jinu's face also became serious. Dungeons are truly scary. But seeing places from the game appear in real life, he directed his eyes toward the road ahead, thinking to himself, "To be honest, I'm extremely excited." The two of them went deep inside. "Is that the market area? Selling low-level summoning scrolls here. With that summon, I can pay you about this much." "Yes." "With this, I can pull up to C rank. What's the rate?" "Yes." "Here, people can freely trade everything from summoning scrolls to runes." Jinu looked around, a smile of excitement on his face. Truly nostalgic. "Back then, I was always selling or opening summoning scrolls and runes with the rich guy B troll. GJ brother, just choose whatever you want. This rich guy B troll covers the gambling table." Meanwhile, Jin walked and explained, "See that flyer over there? Almost everything you need is there. So if you need instructions, just go to the information counter." She didn't forget to add, "Also, Appa is still a newbie, so why don't you try visiting the academy run by the player headquarters over there?" She didn't forget to add, "Also, Appa is still a newbie, so why don't you try visiting the academy run by the player headquarters over there?" In his heart, he had already calculated the path for himself, because either way, from now on, I'm just going to stay here and grind levels. Jin still felt worried and asked back, "Are you sure you'll be okay?" Jinu continued to assure, "You go back first. Thank for leading the way." Seeing that, she replied, "Are you planning to stay here?" Just taking a few steps forward, he replied, "I plan to go see around here by myself for a while." Hearing this, Jin nodded as if she understood. So that's it. However, she still felt very worried. Appa has been acting strangely lately, as if he's possessed by something. He just woke up not long ago. Is he really okay? Jin had to tell herself, forget it. He's probably trying very hard to understand everything, so maybe I can only stand and watch. She shouted after him, "Don't overexert yourself. If you need help, call me." Jinu just gave a short answer before moving out of Jin's sight. "Got it." She shouted after him, "Don't overexert yourself. If you need help, call me." Jinu just gave a short answer before moving out of Jin's sight. "Got it. No one will come around here, right?" Once he had clearly determined, Jinnu started to summon. Ramba appeared with an excited face. Jinnu saw this and hurriedly raised his hand to cover Ramba's mouth. This unexpected action made her unable to help but feel puzzled. What? What is it? Jinnu's face was extremely serious when declaring, Ramba, from now on you are not allowed to talk when we are outside. Understood? This made Ramba confused. Why? He instructed carefully. Because we can't let others pay attention to you. From now on, only talk when we're in a dungeon, understood? If you understand, nod. Good. Then he sat in one place and started to calculate. Now I should organize my thoughts a bit, right? I'll need some initial capital to start dungeon grinding and such. On the phone, Jinnu's account balance was clearly visible. Looking at that pathetic number, he could only helplessly sigh. Such is life. In Jinnu's heart, he constantly asked himself, could it be even more pathetic? Even if I had an accident, I didn't expect that in my bank account there would only be this much. If I go to do part-time work like before, it's truly a waste of time. He felt angrier and angrier. Damn it. Jinnu's line of thought continued to develop. Surely someone would ask, why not just ask mom and dad? But that is absolute nonsense. Because they still have to work 3 jobs at a time just to support this house. Thinking of this, he asked himself again, and yet I still have to reach out and ask for money from mom and dad? If I do that, I'm no longer a human. I'm no different from a beast. Jinnu's face was now half sad, half determined. Regardless of having to start over, I can still do it. He continued to think about other things. The reason Jinnu is unmatched is because I am a F2P ranker. Looking at the screen in front of him, Jinnu started to calculate. Standard gacha game. The pay-to-win factor is extremely heavy. It seems B-Troll once said he threw in 300 million won, right? And yet, I'm still top-ranked without spending a dime. His eyes clearly showed determination. Is it just because it's reality now that I can't do it? Just wait and see. I will definitely return. Unexpectedly, at this moment, a notification suddenly appeared. Received 500,000 won. Jinnu shouted in surprise. What the hell is this? Where did this money suddenly come from? Don't tell me this is some kind of new player benefit. Attached to the transfer notification were 2 messages from Jinnu's mother. My child, Mom heard from Ajin that you just woke up and intended to try hard, right? Mom knows your personality. Surely you won't open your mouth to ask for pocket money. So use this amount first. Reading this, his nose felt unexpectedly stingy. Mom, memories of the time he was in a coma were recalled. How long she had been worrying and taking care of him. Surely Mom had no money, only suffering. And yet why? Each of her sincere, yearning words always touched him. Jinnu, me son. Mom is right here, so please. Open your eyes. Please become healthy again. He hurriedly wiped away the tears about to fall while mumbling, Mom, thank you. His hand tightened into a fist, clearly showing his determination. Please wait for me, Mom. I will definitely succeed. Jinnu's face now had a determined expression, and he would ensure his whole family could live prosperously. He looked at the information board in front of him and started to calculate. Others have left me far behind for the past 3 years. To catch up, every minute and every second is precious. The first step is that to become the strongest, one must act the part. To gather materials needed for growth, I must conquer dungeons. Therefore, Jinnu started by buying 3 low-level summoning scrolls. First, I need to establish a team. The first one, player Beck Jinnu has obtained the F-rank slime summon. And finally, player Beck Jinnu has obtained the E-rank poison lizard summon. Observing the 3 animals that just appeared, he couldn't help but wonder. I got an E-rank? I'm quite lucky, aren't I? If counting Ramba as E-rank, that means in just 5 pulls I won that 5% twice. Jinnu continued to calculate carefully. Moreover, the performance of the poison lizard is also quite decent. Looking at the overall picture once again, Jinnu made a comment. Good, for now, this lineup is fine. Summon creatures, equip runes according to combat situations, then level them up. In his heart, he was thinking. In other words, farm runes, hunt monsters, tier summoning scrolls. The development system of BOS is just like that. I've always needed that level of grinding. He had even calculated far into the future. And if I collect all 10 of those EX rank summons, a full S-rank team, or floor 100 of the trial tower, I could sweep anything easily. Therefore, first I must search for the remaining X-rank ones. Jinwoo slowly took a step forward. All right, on his face now was a confident smile. Now only the last step remains. Pulling out his phone, Jinwoo mumbled, first, I have to find a dungeon. Dungeon location. In his heart, he was thinking, back when it was a mobile game, I just needed to touch stage, and it was done. It seems it won't be as easy as in the game. Dungeon location. In his heart, he was thinking, back when it was a mobile game, I just needed to touch stage, and it was done. It seems it won't be as easy as in the game. However, just the very next second, his eyes widened. Jinwoo shouted aloud, "What the hell is this?" This noise made those around him feel annoyed. He probably thinks the player zone belongs to him. Jinwoo started reading what was being written on his phone screen. Even with the summon, that important information was presented along with an image of a cat with horns. Today we will learn about entering dungeons. But first, do you know that just having a summon doesn't mean you can enter a dungeon? Can't we just enter like that? Speaking further, dungeon portals appear randomly regardless of location, and one can determine the difficulty of the dungeon through the energy it emits. But the regulations have changed, so no matter how easy the dungeon is, if a rookie wants to enter a dungeon, will they be able to? The answer is no, but the regulations have changed, so no matter how easy the dungeon is, if a rookie wants to enter a dungeon, will they be able to? The answer is no. Jinwoo helplessly sat on the bench, his face not very pleased when mumbling. Fate is truly like shit. Why did I wake up right after the law changed? Ramba's hand gently touched his shoulder. Her face clearly showed the words, "Cheer up, Jinwoo." This attitude made Jinwoo somewhat feel relieved. He patted her head and replied, "Thanks, Ramba." Suddenly the phone in Jinwoo's pocket rang. The person on the other end of the line was none other than Ajin. "Hello." She didn't beat around the bush and asked directly, "What time are you coming home?" "Mom is asking what you want to eat tonight." On this end, Jinwoo hurriedly replied, "I can find something to eat myself. More importantly, do you know about this?" Ajin blankly asked back, "What is it?" At this moment, he replied succinctly, "The fact that you have to register as a player before you can enter a dungeon." This information made her hurriedly pop up. "That's right," Jinwoo asked half jokingly, half seriously. "We didn't intentionally hide it from me, did you?" She tried to argue. "How could that be? I truly just forgot." Then she seriously presented, "Anyway, those regulations are very new. Because too many people died in dungeons, the government had to step in and intervene." Hearing this, Jinwoo couldn't help but be surprised. That many people died, Ajin continued to explain in detail. "It's so tragic, it's indescribable. So now, they actually have staff standing right in front of the door. Absolutely do not go in on your own." Ajin continued to explain in detail. "It's so tragic, it's indescribable. So now, they actually have staff standing right in front of the door. Absolutely do not go in on your own." Ajin continued to explain in detail. "It's so tragic, it's indescribable. So now, they actually have staff standing right in front of the door. Absolutely do not go in on your own." The truth is, Jinwoo also understood clearly. If everyone was blinded by greed and then became a player, sooner or later that would create cracks in the social system. Ajin on this side mentioned another topic. "Oh right, Appa, there's also a ranking system." Jinwoo confusedly asked back. "Ranking?" She explained thoroughly. "That system ranks the top 100 players domestically and internationally every year. 1 is Rachel Rose, 2 is Iosita Hikaru, 3 is William Zenas, 4 is Alexandro Veskov, 5 is Dulong Tai, 6 is Olivia Abernathy, 7 is Gers Bale, 8 is Bettino. Our country didn't even make it to the global ranking board. It's truly miserable." And then mentioned another name. "If the legendary Jinwoo god appears, our country's standing will soar." Jinwoo, hit on a sensitive spot, hurriedly hung up. "Right. Anyway, thanks for letting me know. I'm hanging up." Afterward, he quietly looked at his phone for a long time, finally making a decision. "Since I'm prepared for now, let's end it here for today." The pot of food on the stove was now boiling furiously. Jinwoo's parents spent a quiet time together. Suddenly a sound rang out, making Jinwoo's father have to lift his head to look up. He saw that he was prepared to leave the house and couldn't help but feel worried. "You're up? It's only 6 in the morning." Jinwoo politely replied, "Yes, I have to go out early. His mother now chimed in. Jinwoo, are you going now? Eat a little rice ball before you go. But Jinwoo politely refused. No, it's fine. When tying his shoelaces, he suddenly paused, then gently spoke up. Mom, Dad. On Jinwoo's face now was a bright smile. I'm sorry for only showing you my bad sides for so long, and thank you, Mom and Dad. Saying that, he left the house, leaving the two old people with surprised faces. I'm off. At this moment, Jinwoo's father scratched his head and mumbled, This boy makes people feel embarrassed. Dear, but his mother was worried about another issue. Will our Jinwoo be okay? Seeing her face like that, his father also gently comforted her. Don't worry. Lately the government has safety training. Let's eat breakfast quickly and leave too. Jinwoo's mother looked toward the door and mumbled, Please be safe. Jinwoo, speaking of the fact that this is an era where all of humanity can become players. Besides that, among countries, South Korea has soon attracted attention because of its abnormally high dungeon mortality rate. The reason for this is simple. It's a type of protagonist syndrome caused by greed. Roughly speaking, players fantasize that they are the protagonists of a fantasy world. Because of this delusion, they recklessly rush into dungeons and die. It has even become a serious issue to the point that foreign press speculated that it was because so many talented gamers had disappeared during this period. They analyzed that this is because South Korea was once a gaming powerhouse and still ranks in the top 10 of every leaderboard. How is the body of a male in his 20s who dies in a dungeon recovered? Gaming powerhouse South Korea falls into the abyss. Information is being absorbed by Jinwoo through his phone. Hearing this, he couldn't help but feel bewildered. Unexpectedly, there are so many deaths just because of delusion. Deep down, he continued to think more deeply. It's a bit funny because I myself was addicted to this game for 10 years, but honestly, it sounded a bit pathetic. But aren't they afraid? Deep down, he continued to think more deeply. It's a bit funny because I myself was addicted to this game for 10 years, but honestly, it sounds a bit pathetic. But aren't they afraid? Then Jinwoo moved forward. He presented his information paper, accompanied by a word. This is my application. The staff member quickly replied. All right, registration is all done. At this moment, Jinwoo asked more. May I ask how many people will be granted player status? At this moment, Jinwoo asked more. May I ask how many people will be granted player status? But finally, he decided. Jinwoo muttered to himself, if I can't even overcome a small thing like this. He determined to himself. Then, how could I be called the top one? At the coffee shop for candidates waiting for results, some profiles were placed on the table with annoyed remarks. Unexpectedly, out of this many people, only 50 were chosen. Park Chong-suk looked at the pile of papers in front of him and remarked, if you want to recruit real talent, you have to choose more. Chong-suk, headquarters judge, he himself mumbled. Honestly, the old geezers sitting in air-conditioned rooms are making everything stagnant. Unexpectedly, before he could finish thinking, he was interrupted by an attack. What is that? The person who entered spoke sarcastically. Hey, Park Chong-suk. Kim Jang looked at the scene in front of him and added a challenging word. You killed my boys, and yet you look so relaxed. Chong-suk's face immediately became extremely angry. You crazy bastard. He also quickly resorted to his summon. A team was quickly established. People around seeing this scene also had to exclaim, that's the headquarters martial alliance. I don't know how many places there are, but they had to come right here. Jinwoo at this moment was also drawn by that disturbance. He looked at the tension between the two of them. What's going on? Jinwoo's face was not very pleased by this. What kind of crazy situation is this? The attention of those around was focused on the tense scene in front. Suddenly, what happened? Even some of them trembled with fear. What to do? We won't die, right? Right. Just then, one of the Alliance guys popped up. It's fine. That person is Park Chong-suk. People call him the Yiksha, the destroyer of the Alliance. Jinwoo also directed his eyes toward there. He looked at Kim Jang, a thought flashed in his head. Alliance, accompanied by a guess. Don't tell me they're even using summons to do evil now. Park Chong-suk loudly signaled. Emergency situation. Don't tell me they're even using summons to do evil now. Jinwoo also quickly followed and summoned Ramba. She was still bewildered at this moment, trying to see what was going on. As soon as the first word was uttered, Jinwoo immediately blocked Ramba's mouth. He softly reminded, sorry, but you promised not to talk while outside, didn't you? Over on this side, Kim Jang continued his taunting. So, it turns out you're a justice-seeking disciple after all. He didn't waste any time and immediately ordered his red demon to charge in and attack. Let's see how long you can last. Jinwoo hid in a spot, cautiously observing the situation. Intervening for no reason would just be a headache. And then he made a decision. For now, he would just watch how they fought. And then he made a decision. For now, he would just watch how they fought. The fire butterfly continuously fired off fireballs, which landed on the ground and caused explosions. However, Kim Jang's red demon didn't seem affected at all. This only made him feel more smug. Is that really all you've got? On the opposite side, Park Chang-suk was starting to feel annoyed. Meanwhile, Jinwoo muttered a remark. It was as if he couldn't believe his own eyes as he exclaimed, "What a total amateur. Even Ramba above my head is having the same reaction. Is that even a fight?" Jinwoo hurriedly spoke up as she grabbed her hair. "That actually hurts, Ramba." The surrounding people started whispering to each other. It looks like Park Chang-suk is being pushed back. What if he loses? Every word they spoke was filled with fear. No way. That crowd definitely wouldn't hesitate to kill even normal people. Jinwoo, upon hearing this, couldn't help but ask himself, what should I do? He looked at the situation and began to analyze it. If he stepped in to help and got dragged into this mess, while the red demon was gradually gaining the upper hand, and then a conclusion was reached, he would die right here before even having the chance to live a peaceful life. Thinking his doing, Jinwoo stepped closer and started a conversation with Park Chang-suk. "Excuse me." Seeing this, he tried to stop him. "It's dangerous. Please step back." But he flatly refused. "No. Your fire turtle's skill timing is off." Next, he pointed behind them with some instructions. "Look at the buffers behind the red orb." Jinwoo forced Park Chang-suk to look at the demon behind them. "They're close to their fire resistance buff." Jinwoo forced Park Chang-suk to look at the demon behind them. "They're close to their fire resistance buff." Hearing this, Park Chang-suk quickly told himself. Every time the buffers in the back used a skill, the orc's body turned red. Was that fire resistance? He very quickly thought of a countermeasure. If that's the case, then the red demon on this side is preparing to attack. But Park Chang-suk was one step ahead. Right now, Fire Turtle, an extremely powerful pillar of fire, was fired, aiming at the red demon. It cried out in pain, caught off guard. Witnessing this, Park Chang-suk couldn't help but shout in excitement. "Awesome! Did it really work?" Meanwhile, Kim Jang on the opposite side raised his voice and roared, "Damn it! How did you know?" The moment the faint smoke faded away was also the moment Park Chang-suk's wood-attribute summoned beast launched its attack. Kim Jang could only helplessly watch as his support demon was attacked. This is crazy. Park Chang-suk's summoned beast seized the opportunity and attacked in unison. The red demon took the full force of a rain of fire and burned to a crisp. Kim Jang watched them disappear and could only mutter in horror. How could this happen? He was terrified when he saw Park Chang-suk slowly walking toward him. Wait a minute. On Kim Jang's face now, there was only fear. "I'll turn myself in. I surrender. I was wrong." However, Park Chang-suk's wood-attribute summoned beast had already moved. It bound him tightly, despite his desperate pleas. "Please spare me. I'll never be a gangster again." Park Chang-suk made a cold declaration. "Shut up." His voice was low and grim. "You know the League will execute you immediately." Kim Jang looked helplessly at the branches wrapping around his body. "No." Park Chang-suk coldly declared one sentence. "Right." The signal was given, and the summoned beast immediately tightened its grip, turning Kim Jang into an exploding balloon. By this point, the surrounding people finally felt somewhat relieved. Is it over? They started cheering for Park Chang-suk. "We won. Park Chang-suk won. You're amazing." Park Chang-suk was even excited when he saw Kim Jang's death. That guy deserved it. The headquarters is the best. This level of new values made Jinwoo wonder, even if he's a criminal, to hold such hatred when someone has just been killed right before your eyes. This world is truly no longer the place I used to know. His gaze became sharper. If you don't have real determination, it's hard to survive. Meanwhile, Park Chang-suk was slowly walking toward him. "Sir," he opened the conversation very politely. "Thank you so much for what happened just now. I am Park Chang-suk, a judge for the player headquarters," followed by a thank you. "Thanks to you, I was able to catch that terrorist." Jinwoo shook his hand and replied, "It's nothing." Park Chang-suk continued to ask about another matter. I want to send you a reward. May I ask which guild you belong to? At this point, he honestly explained, the thing is, I haven't registered with the headquarters yet. Is that okay? Hearing this, Park Chong-suk couldn't help but be amazed. What? You recognize the counter to tens of thousands of summon types in the blink of an eye, yet you haven't officially registered yet. Park Chong-suk continued to suggest. Then do you have an ID card? We just need to verify your identity. Jinwoo quickly replied. I do. Taking the ID card in his hand, Park Chong-suk politely replied. Thank you. He briefly mentioned the procedure. After identity verification, the reward according to regulations will be issued. Hearing this, Jinwoo replied briefly. I see. He smiled and turned to leave. Then I'll leave it to you. Park Chong-suk's expression changed almost immediately. He pressed the button to make a call, then entrusted the task to the person on the other end of the line. It's me. I just sent you some data. The subject being investigated is none other than Jinwoo. Yes, Beck Jinwoo. Please investigate him for me. And the man himself still knew nothing about this matter. Jinwoo returned to where he had summoned Ramba. A piece of bread was presented in front of her. Here, you must have been frustrated not being able to talk earlier, right? Ramba's eyes sparkled when she saw the food. Watching her enjoy this piece of bread, Jinwoo could only silently remark, she's really simple. He felt much more relieved as he continued to think. I heard some players even argue with their summons, but with Ramba, it's easy. Just a cream bun solves everything. After that, he calculated other things. Anyway, everything will be fine, right? In Jinwoo's head, he was recalling the fight earlier. He didn't intend to get involved initially, but if he hadn't, maybe everyone would have died there. When the Red Demon had almost won, and then he sighed. The world has changed much more than he imagined. Jinwoo clearly showed his determination. He couldn't delay his hunting any longer. Regarding the targets, the next step was first to gather summoning scrolls as quickly as possible and call the next summon. Among them, the reason for this choice was because the top priority was the Spearman and the Dragon Mage. On this side, Ramba was already full. Jinwoo stood up and signaled, all right. On his face was a bright smile. Let's get going. Right in the middle of the bustling park, Park Chong-suk exclaimed, what? He hurriedly asked again. Jinwoo had been hospitalized for 3 years because of a car accident. At the same time, Park Chong-suk also realized. No wonder he was an unregistered player. Old stories came flooding back. Thinking about it, 3 years ago was exactly when the world turned upside down. When things were that chaotic, accidents were common. So, in a way, it made sense. The headquarters staff quickly added. Yes, moreover, he submitted his player registration application as soon as he was discharged. Hearing this, he was startled. What? In his haste, Park Chong-suk looked back at each line of Jinwoo's information. Looking at the screen, he suddenly muttered, is it real? What the hell? Looking at the screen, he suddenly muttered, is it real? What the hell? Pondering for a moment, Park Chong-suk suddenly suggested, by the way, regarding the judge assigned this month, tell them I will personally step in this time. Don't ask why. The person on the other end quickly replied, yes, I understand. Following that, the dial tones sounded, signaling the end of the call, leaving Park Chong-suk in thought. Waking up after an accident was one thing, but registering as a player immediately upon waking up, his ability to adapt must be extremely fast. The more he thought, the brighter the smile on his face became. Beck Jinwoo. He might just become an extraordinary talent. On the other hand, Jinwoo was now in a formal building. He slowly took each step, accompanied by new exclamations. Jinwoo looked ahead cautiously. He knew it would be crowded, but seeing the suffocating crowd, he asked suspiciously, are all these people here for training? Then Jinwoo thought to himself, so I have to overcome all these competitors to become a player. Even so, he was very relaxed. That would be a piece of cake because no one understands the game better than he does. Just then, another rhythmic sound of footsteps echoed. Not waiting long, the judge spoke up. Is everyone present? This made him eagerly look over. It's starting. However, Jinwoo's expression quickly froze in shock. Right in front of him, Park Chong-suk clearly declared, I am Park Chong-suk, a judge from the headquarters. Now, I will begin the training session before the written exam. Then a while later, the sunlight was now gradually softening. Jinwoo and Park Chong-suk were meeting in a cafe. You're a bit surprised, aren't you? Before that question, he replied confusedly, yes, I just didn't expect the judge to be you. Park Chong-suk smiled. Maybe this is what they call destiny. How was the training session? But this time Jinwoo continued to hesitate. The training session. Recalling earlier, Park Chong-suk had taught them a few things. This is a type that often appears in the written exam. Hearing this, Jinwoo was startled when considering the summon combinations. So here, the movement from him also accidentally woke up Ramba, who was sleeping soundly. What the hell? Meanwhile, he was feeling very indignant. Are you kidding? Isn't this the combo I used to popularize years ago? If you're using that, ask for my permission first. Even so, he just suppressed it awkwardly. It's not bad, although it is true that I am a bit annoyed. The laughter from Park Chong-suk echoed. I'm glad to hear that. Then he suddenly cleared his throat. The reason I called you out separately, Jinwoo, is because of the reward I mentioned last time. With a serious attitude, Park Chong-suk began to speak. But before that, there's one thing I want to ask you. Jinwoo curiously replied. What is it? As soon as he received that consent, he immediately asked. Jinwoo, were you perhaps a gamer? Hearing that title, he was surprised. A gamer. He also quickly added. Gamer is the term for people who used to play Summoner Wars before. No matter how long they played, as long as they played that game, they were called gamers. Summoner Wars and 70% of the Korean rank were gamers. Thanks to that explanation, Jinwoo realized. Thinking back, for someone who wasn't even a full player to know about summon buffs was indeed a bit strange. Then he admitted, yes, I did play. That answer made Park Chong-suk excited. I knew it. May I ask how long you played? Before this question, Jinwoo was somewhat hesitant. It was a dead game. There were hardly any players left. If he said 10 years, he would be recognized immediately. After a moment of hesitation, he softly gave a number, about a year. But contrary to his worry, Park Chong-suk suddenly jumped up. Are you serious? His over-the-top reaction made Jinwoo bewildered. Yes, is there a problem? What the hell? Did I undersell it? Regarding Park Chong-suk, he looked as if he had just found a treasure. You really played that dead game for a whole year? That's truly terrifying. Conversely, he was extremely uncomfortable, unable to argue. Next, Jinwoo awkwardly said, yes, it just happened naturally. On the other hand, Park Chong-suk was overjoyed. Most Korean rankers only played for less than half a year, yet he played for a whole year. But very quickly he returned to the main topic. Forgive me for being rude. I have prepared 2 reward options for you. Please choose the one you want. Jinwoo nodded after hearing. Okay, I understand. Just like that, he quickly listed them. First, I will not only use my authority to grant you player registration immediately. Park Chong-suk said very confidently. You'll be exempted from the entrance exam immediately, and I will also guarantee you a position at the headquarters. Jinwoo at this moment was listening while resting his chin in a very indifferent manner. And the second option, Park Chong-suk intentionally emphasized, a reward of 5 million won. He himself immediately judged. This is the kind of choice that is clear as day, isn't it? As for Park Chong-suk, he smugly laughed to himself. How about it now? Not only registered, but also having a job at the headquarters, which is harder than even large corporations. Naturally, you will choose the first one. But Jinwoo's voice rang out decisively. I'll take the money. Hearing that, he was very shocked. What did you say? What? But otherwise, player registration will take quite a long time, right? On the other hand, Jinwoo still coldly drew the line. I appreciate your concern, but I'll be fine. At the same time, he also took the initiative to stand up. I can handle the registration myself, and I also don't really intend to join the headquarters. I'm still busy looking for summons. I don't have time to waste. Just like that, he and his summon went to take the test, and it didn't take long before the staff called his name, candidate Baek Jinwoo. He, with a ready mindset, replied, yes. Next, she professionally gave the instructions as he heard in the practical test earlier. You just need to conquer the dungeon every day. This time you will enter the 3rd dungeon. The format is participation. At this time, Park Chong-suk was observing them from behind. He himself was still confused. I never thought he would refuse. Suddenly Park Chong-suk frowned tensely. Moreover, remembering the previous matter, when an exclamation of surprise rang out. This is crazy. He understands runes and summons deeper than anyone else. The people at the Research Institute were very happy. Why didn't I think of this sooner? Thanks to this candidate, Baek Jinwoo, I realized how narrow my vision was. Another person was so moved they cried. Korea finally has a talent. He even affirmed that if everything went smoothly, this guy could even make it onto the leaderboard. This made Park Chong-suk bewildered and confused. Is he that good? Returning to the present, his regret grew even greater. This is the first time I've seen those arrogant professors react like that. I should have offered better conditions, shouldn't I? Just then, the staff member pointed toward the gate. The explanation ends here. Now you can enter. Jinwoo walked closer to the entrance. Then he brought a curiosity along with the gorilla and Rambo inside. Let's see. The space immediately changed. The system's energy enveloped him in a bright yellow light. Soon, they were standing in a completely different atmosphere. The dungeon description also appeared right in front of their eyes. The room is full of highly toxic slimes. Defeat the slimes and quickly escape the dungeon. Without hesitation, Jinwoo gave the first order. Ramba, upon hearing this, acted energetically. I will accumulate it immediately. And thanks to this resonance, the gorilla continuously boosted its power. The third dungeon is a maze. Its structure is to defeat slimes while finding the path, then finally encounter the boss. And it is also a place where newcomers waste all their time getting lost. Time is up. After finishing the calculation, the corners of Jinwoo's lips twitched. He created a shield and dashed straight forward. However, the slimes are very slow. Just ignore them. Run straight through. Ramba also shouted, "Let's go." Jinwoo himself thought simultaneously, I'm so sick of getting lost in this place that finding the path is just child's play. And with that confidence, they aimed straight for a door over there. And right when the door opened, Jinwoo immediately ran through it. If you take the shortcut, it's done. But just then, dangerous warnings went off one after another. Jinwoo was now looking forward to it. This is the first real face-to-face encounter, right? Right in front of him, a giant slime was waiting. Giant slime. Jinwoo excitedly ordered an attack. Ramba stood next to him, energetically using magic. Let's rock and roll, let's go. The gorilla enthusiastically charged directly forward. It leaped high, preparing to strike its opponent. The gorilla used all its strength to punch down with a violent strike. Its flurry of punches made Jinwoo sigh immensely. As expected, there's a reason Ramba is considered too overpowered. He proudly thought to himself, even an F-rank summon can be boosted to that level of attack speed. Jinwoo stood and watched, feeling excited by proxy. Try to imagine how terrifying it would be if that attack speed boost was applied to another summon. On the other side, Ramba was energetically cheering for the gorilla. Perfect, that's great. Crush it. The system quickly displayed a notification. You have defeated the boss monster. It continued to confirm the time with Jinwoo. Dungeon conquered in 5 minutes and 32 seconds. He read it and sighed in resignation. So slow. Back when I was Jinwoo God, it took me less than 1 minute, but I have to accept it with an F rank. It continued to confirm the time with Jinwoo. Dungeon conquered in 5 minutes and 32 seconds. Jinwoo muttered in shock. What? Notifications kept appearing rapidly. First time achievement reward is being delivered. Premium Summon Scroll X3. First time achievement reward is being delivered. Premium Summon Scroll X3. Additional reward is being delivered. Low-grade Abrasive X12. This result was completely beyond his expectations. Is this a new Korean record? Returning to the familiar room, a startled voice rang out. Senior, look at this. The record has changed. The headquarters staff member looked over with wide eyes. What? Where? Her subordinate quickly pointed. The third beginner dungeon has been conquered in 5 minutes and 32 seconds. The staff member muttered in shock. In just 5 minutes? Such a huge shortening? Did Kong Jian Ho discover a new combination? She also saw the other person's information card. Baek Jinwoo, 20 years old, South Korea, date of birth 20. Ability, the headquarters staff member remarked honestly. I've never heard this name. Her subordinate doubted. I don't think he's a ranked player. This hypothesis made her even more stunned. So an unknown player broke the record. And it's a first-place record at that? News quickly spread to the headquarters meeting. A staff member whispered in shock. This is truly astonishing. Baek Jinwoo wasn't the only one. Someone else was just as excited. In Park Chong-suk's heart, He praised Jinwoo to the skies, no doubt about it. He's the real deal. Jinwoo is a national treasure. He officially made a firm decision. No matter what, we must keep him. At the very least, if our country wants to survive, we must prevent him from becoming a citizen elsewhere. Park Chung-suk hurriedly gave instructions to his subordinates. Register Jinwoo as a player immediately. The staff member asked in surprise. What? Even without a match? Park Chung-suk analyzed eloquently. As everyone knows, time attack is divided into domestic and global. The Korean first-place position held by Kang Jeon-ho is 6 minutes and 41 seconds. The global first-place position held by Rachel is 2 minutes and 25 seconds. He personally stood up to convince everyone. Jinwoo has surpassed the time of the Korean leader. Does a player match still have any meaning? Park Chung-suk decisively concluded. I believe that those with talent must be granted privileges. The magnificent headquarters building loomed in sight. Jinwoo was here, feeling extremely bored. Who knew 5 minutes would become the top record? Is Korea's level only this much? A familiar voice spoke up. Jinwoo. Park Chung-suk welcomed him with a bright smile. I've been wanting to see you so much. Bet Jinwoo. He saw that look, and it was truly frightening. As soon as they met, he rambled on. I saw your time attack record. It was truly wonderful. How on earth did you break the Korean record in just one try? Park Chung-suk asked even more excitedly. The maze of the third dungeon is incredibly complex, right? Jinwoo just knew how to laugh along perfunctorily. I guess so, he shyly thought to himself. It feels like I'm being praised for being a fish that swims well. Park Chung-suk personally handed him the card. First, please accept this. Jinwoo received the card and muttered in surprise. This is... He excitedly explained immediately. This is a player card. You have been specially approved for immediate player registration. Park Chung-suk eloquently emphasized further. Because you have nothing left to prove. Bet Jinwoo. When he received the card, Jinwoo was also extremely satisfied. This isn't bad, right? Park Chung-suk politely expressed his curiosity. May I ask how you managed to break the record? Holding the player card in his hand, Jinwoo suddenly hesitated. He cautiously considered. If he shared what he knew now, Korea's level would skyrocket in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo was forced to think thoroughly about this matter. The problem is what happens after that. With the best scenario, worshipping Lord Jinwoo God. If he's lucky, he will enjoy fame and fortune with the government support. But he also thought of the worst-case scenario, being kidnapped by evil people, forced to spill everything he knows. I've already said everything, but on the other hand, he could also be forcibly dragged away and stripped of everything. After deliberating, Jinwoo carefully spoke up. First of all, your question just now. He flatly questioned Park Chung-suk. You know it's extremely rude, right? He understood and took the initiative to apologize. Yes, I apologize. Park Chung-suk continued frankly. The gamer strategy is only shared among gamers. That is extremely sensitive information. But he remained steadfast in persuading Jinwoo. But please understand, Korea is thirsting for talent to that extent. But he remained steadfast in persuading Jinwoo. But please understand, Korea is thirsting for talent to that extent. Jinwoo silently assessed the other party's demeanor. He had transferred the promised money immediately. His personality was decent, and he seemed very sensible. He smiled with interest, an idea occurring to him. Why not try to exploit the government? If done skillfully, I might even develop faster than working alone. Therefore, Jinwoo responded to the judge. Park Chung-suk replied nervously. Yes. He officially proposed. Let's meet privately. Let's move somewhere else for a bit. The location was a cozy cafe nearby. Park Chung-suk expressed his desire directly. I'll be blunt. Please help us. He sincerely emphasized. Our headquarters needs your knowledge, Jinwoo. Park Chung-suk also frankly revealed. We investigated and heard that you were bedridden in the hospital for 3 years. Jinwoo looked slightly annoyed. You check my background? To that question, he had to confess. I apologize, but unregistered players with high skills are very likely to be people from the league. Jinwoo hardened his face and retorted. I'm registered now, so there won't be any further investigations, right? Don't do that again. Park Chung-suk could only obediently promise immediately. Yes. Jinwoo's indifferent attitude also made him suspicious. Usually, people are terrified at the mention of the government, and try their best to cooperate. Park Chang-suk silently evaluated in his heart. Yet this guy shows no sign of that. He knows his own value very well. Jinwoo put down his coffee cup and discussed serious matters seriously. First of all, actually, I've thought about this. What do I get if I help the government side? Park Chang-suk decisively declared. Cooperation from me. You don't seem to understand this very well. Cooperation. He proudly introduced himself to Jinwoo. It's a bit embarrassing to say it myself, but I actually hold a fairly high position at the headquarters. Park Chang-suk continued to explain. Headquarters judges are elected by public vote. So if my performance is quite good, I can get more votes and climb even higher. Jinwoo vaguely understood the above definition. He's like a politician. Huh. After explaining, Park Chang-suk steadfastly expressed. Therefore, he held his head high and gave a firm guarantee. Within the scope of my authority, I will provide you with every possible support. Jinwoo silently considered. Sounds a bit unattractive. The compensation is vague, and because he's a public servant, he can't arbitrarily use the budget. Finally, he had his own decision. If so, then? Jinwoo tapped his fingers on the table and spoke seriously. Then let's do it this way. He directly made a request. Just for 1 month. Park Chang-suk couldn't help but be surprised by the brief duration. What? Jinwoo smiled confidently and explained the condition. Because I just registered, for 1 month, I will request your support while I develop. He also clearly presented the accompanying parts. If I find it okay, we can continue to cooperate. If it's not okay, I will return everything I've received or give you information equivalent in value. Park Chang-suk couldn't help but laugh at Jinwoo's boldness. Does that mean what he's saying right now is that he will use me as his personal assistant for a month? He thought to himself with interest. Cheeky, but there's no other way. After that, Park Chang-suk raised his hand and generously accepted. All right, because he firmly believed that being close to him would surely yield more. Park Chang-suk shook hands with Jinwoo, sealing the deal. Then let's go with that. Jinwoo continued to exchange with Park Chang-suk. First of all, there's one thing I want to ask. He seriously made a request. Please don't let news of my new record get out. Jinwoo honestly expressed. I'm worried about my safety. Park Chang-suk suddenly had a question. Excuse me if it's about your safety. The headquarters can, but he quickly realized. No, Park Chang-suk silently determined in his heart. A headquarters that can't even handle a gang. How can it protect a top talent? He clenched his fists in tension. Jinwoo knew that too. Finally, Park Chang-suk agreed with him. I understand. I will try my best to control this. He quickly continued. But over time, some information will still leak out. That is unavoidable. Without waiting for the end of the sentence, Jinwoo stood up immediately. That's fine then. He decisively left. Then I'll take my leave. Park Chang-suk could only awkwardly say goodbye. See you next time. Finally, Jinwoo achieved what he wanted. Good. Now I've made him keep quiet. He opened his phone excitedly, thinking to himself, time to check the rewards I received earlier. Jinwoo checked the system and was full of admiration. He muttered blankly, these rewards are insane. Polishing water is just okay, but there are actually premium summon scrolls? The system showed 2 top-tier rewards, Premium Summon Scroll X3, Low-Grade Polishing Solution X2. Jinwoo nodded in agreement. Just as expected from the first Conquest Achievement reward, which can only be received once per player. But then he pondered, I really want to open them right now, but gambling with just 3 scrolls is a bit. Jinwoo muttered to himself, maybe selling them for cash is better. Suddenly he remembered one thing. Ah, that's right, I still have that. Jinwoo immediately took out his phone. Player Network, a place that only registered players can use. Most item transactions are made through here. He unconsciously remembered Park Chang-suk's face. Or perhaps that was what the old congressman told him when he installed it. At that time, he firmly emphasized that you must use it. I highly recommend it. Therefore, Jinwoo started searching. Let's see. Looking at the price, he was startled and exclaimed, Huh. Jinwoo pressed the phone close to his face as if he couldn't believe his eyes. What? He muttered tremblingly. Premium items cost up to 3 million. Jinwoo quickly calculated. So that means I just earned 900,000 won after just 5 minutes of dungeon running? This is crazy. The capitalist spirit suddenly surged in him. And this is just at this level. Once my stats increase further, the prospect of wealth makes Jinwoo dreamily think. Mom, Dad, and Ajin, I will never let anyone worry about money ever again. The whole family was looking at him happily. That is so. Jinnu, brother Jinnu. He started seriously selecting items. First, I'll sell these premium summon scrolls, then use that money to buy low-grade summon scrolls. The Army Instructor and Fire Dragon Mage are both broken game summoners that can take down S ranks. Until I summon those two, I'll only open low-grade scrolls. His shopping cart was already set up, selling 3 premium summon scrolls. Scrolling for a while, Jinnu realized something, but he quickly found an inconsistency. Low-grade types are usually accumulated when going into dungeons. Why are they priced at 5,001 per scroll? And although the number of sellers is much higher than the number of buyers, no one is selling them cheaper. An idea popped into Jinnu's head. At times like this, the person on the other end answered immediately. Hello. The person he called was Ajin. Brother, what's wrong? Jinnu boldly thought to himself, it's time to use your luck. The explanation didn't last long. Ajin quickly pointed out to him immediately that the headquarters buys those. Jinnu asked confusedly, headquarters? Why, whatever. The person on the other end nonchalantly said, I heard it's to support rankers or something like that. Ajin enthusiastically explained the process. They use the state budget to buy summon scrolls in large quantities, and the floor price is always 501. But every day, they have a limit on how many they buy. She emphasized one thing. Because you can always sell to the headquarters, no one is willing to lower the price. They just hold the price and wait. Thanks to Ajin, Jinnu realized. So that's it. Ajin quickly continued. But it seems that policy is about to be abolished. He asked in surprise, huh? Why? She pointed out directly. That's an old policy from the early days, so now the low-grade scrolls at the headquarters doesn't bother using are piling up like a mountain. This is what Jinnu needed to hear. Really? Thank you for telling me. I'm hanging up now. He smiled boldly, deciding to take full advantage of this opportunity. So low-grade scrolls are excessively redundant. Huh? The next day at the office, Parchong-suk brightly welcomed the key figure. Welcome, Jinnu. Parchong-suk laughed excitedly. You must have missed me a lot to come back so soon, right? Jinnu deliberately avoided the question. Yes, something like that. He warmly asked further. Do you need to find me for something? Jinnu hesitated. Well, he politely stated his request. I was wondering if I could take some low-grade summon scrolls. Park Chong-suk was surprised. What? Not mid-grade or high-grade? He still enthusiastically asked. How many are you planning to take? Jinnu firmly closed the deal. The more, the better. Park Chong-suk whispered seriously. The more. He cautiously thought. I receive 50,000 scrolls every day, so giving him a few is no problem. But Park Chong-suk directly set conditions. I can give them to you, but if you intend to resell them for profit, then, Jinnu nonchalantly explained, that's not it. They're just rotting on the market anyway. So I thought it's better to use them myself. Hearing this, he understood immediately. So you've already figured it out with the rest. If someone like him goes to the trouble of collecting low-grade scrolls like this, he's clearly plotting something very special. He generously requested, all right, but I have one condition. Jinnu looked surprised. A condition? Only then did Park Chong-suk decisively demand. Give me a decent piece of information as a sample. He reasoned very logically. I am a congressman at the headquarters elected by the people. If I'm caught arbitrarily distributing spell scrolls bought with taxpayers' money, the people will lose trust in me. Park Chong-suk expressed frankly. So if you provide me with information, I will give you a corresponding number of low-grade summon scrolls in return. You see, I need at least a few safety nets for myself. It seems Jinnu had foreseen this. So he won't give them away for free? He became even more confident. All the better. That means if I give him good information, he will value it accordingly. Jinnu comfortably accepted. Sounds good. He started revealing an issue. First of all, there's something called the achievement chain. Park Chong-suk had indeed never heard this phrase. Achievement chain? Jinnu corrected. Yes. Currently, the reward for the domestic first-place achievement is set at 3 premium spell scrolls per dungeon. That means completing it in 6 minutes and 20 seconds gets you premium summon scroll X3. He explained in detail, but when another player breaks that record, they can receive the reward again. For example, with a 5-minute 32-second achievement compared to 6 minutes and 20 seconds, they will receive Premium Summon Scroll X3. Taking advantage of this, Jinnu directly offered a plan. So if players take turns shortening the record by just 1 second each time, they can maximize the total value of rewards received. It can be understood like a relay race. 5 minutes 31 seconds, shortened to 5 minutes 30 seconds. The more they do that, the more Korea's national power increases. Park Chong-suk quickly acknowledged this smart method. I understand. Actually, that's also a method we used before. Most current rankers have already received that reward once. He approved immediately. However, there's still many players who have never received any rewards, so I don't think this will cause any problems. Jinna nodded briefly. I understand. He continued to reveal. The entire information I am offering is the complete strategy for the third dungeon. Park Chong-suk excitedly clapped his hands loudly. I knew it. He asked with wide eyes. That's the method you used this time, right? Jinna was a bit tired of that enthusiasm. No, that's something the 5 emperors used. He said he remembered all their names, so he wouldn't believe me anyway. He continued to present how to do it. Yes, with this method, anyone who follows it can complete the dungeon in about 3 minutes. Park Chong-suk cheered excitedly. 3 minutes? What on earth is that? Suddenly, Jinnu seriously interrupted him. Before going into that, he quickly held up a hand of 5 fingers. Jinnu started to make a deal. We should decide on a reasonable price for this information. In addition to the low-grade summon scrolls you promised, I want 50 more premium summon scrolls. What do you think? Park Chong-suk exclaimed in shock. Excuse me, 50 scrolls is 150 million. He still firmly closed the deal. Honestly, that price is still cheap. Jinnu flatly emphasized, this tactic works even in high-level dungeons, not just the early low-level ones. And the amount of achievement rewards you receive from it alone is worth billions. Of course, Park Chong-suk couldn't refute it. That was true. So finally, he decided to accept the deal. Agreed. Of course, Park Chong-suk couldn't refute it. That was true. So finally, he decided to accept the deal. Agreed. Satisfied with this transaction, Jinnu smiled and guaranteed. You won't regret this deal. The sky gradually turned to afternoon when someone's voice rang out. Judge, everyone is gathered. Park Chong-suk's team members had gathered. Why gather so suddenly right at closing time? On his face was a smile. I called you here because there's something I want to test. The guy on the opposite side felt excited hearing that. Oh, the judge never calls us like this for no reason. So this is definitely not a normal test, right? Park Chong-suk started a present. Everyone knows the news that the third dungeon record was just broken, right? Listeners were all focused on that topic. I heard about that. I think his name is Jinnu. Park Chong-suk's face was very confident when revealing. This time I got a great tactic from abroad. I tested it on the player Jinnu, and the results were extremely satisfying. However, those opposite were a bit confused. Really? So that's why you announced not to disclose this. They were quick-witted enough to guess the purpose. So the reason you called us here is... Park Chong-suk didn't hesitate to admit. Yes, he declared seriously. From now on, we will carry out timed tests in the third dungeon, then start preparing for the formation by summoning a beast. The key summon to conquer this dungeon is this little guy right here. Looking at that spotted Komodo, the other members were confused. Isn't that a spotted Komodo dragon? Because the truth is, the spotted Komodo is a summon belonging to the spotted lizard species, with a size approximately that of an adult. It has high durability and decent attack power. A typical warrior type. At least that's the common information everyone knows. Basic info for one would be B-rank spotted Komodo, height 170 centimeters, a well-rounded summon capable of both tanking and dealing damage. However, in reality, because it is B-rank, it is not easy to nurture. What is this? It's truly garbage. Compared to other B-ranks, its ability to deal damage and tank is very mediocre, making it a summon players often ignore. However, players did not know that the spotted Komodo's main food is the giant slime. Just feed it right in the dungeon. It can hunt giant slimes, creating a massive difference. At a high-rise building at this time, a series of announcements appeared one after another. Beginner third dungeon, domestic first place, Park Chun-sik. Time, 5 minutes 31 seconds. Beginner third dungeon domestic first place, Lee Dong-myeon. Time, 5 minutes 29 seconds. The participants were all excited. Judge, what you said is true. We reached the final boss room in less than 4 minutes. The spotted Komodo dragon's appetite is no joke. This little guy is truly a savior. They quickly concluded one thing. So from now on, we don't have to worry about cleaning up the aftermath. We can even challenge the world record. Time continued to pass. The next day, on the screen was a Chow news broadcast. Korea continuously breaks records in the third dungeon. Could it be that Park Chung-suk-sik-sha of the headquarters is behind this? Below was another article. Judge Park Chung-suk collected valuable information cheaply from abroad. Can they challenge the world record? Reading this, Park Chung-suk couldn't help but feel satisfied. This made everything more certain. Jinu's value had far exceeded that of a normal first-year gamer. He himself concluded, "All right, I've decided. I will establish a specialized team dedicated to Jinu." In Park Chung-suk's hand was a stack of files. As for the members displayed on the table, he excitedly muttered, "These 3 should be fine." Elsewhere, at this moment, Jinu's hand holding the phone was shaking uncontrollably. On his face was excitement that couldn't be hidden. Is making money always this easy? Mr. Park Chung-suk is truly generous. Even Ramba raised her voice. How many cream buns can this money buy? Jinu continued to open the information sheet. In addition, in front of him was the summon scroll storage. Low-grade summon scroll, X10-000. Reading this, he muttered contentedly. The 10,000 low-grade summon scrolls that the headquarters staff sent this morning. Jinu's smile had a mischievous look. He kept his promise, so I must finish my part too. He habitually opened the water bottle cap, then turned to the person next to him and asked, "Ramba, are you ready?" She eagerly replied, "Ready." The water in the bottle was poured gently. Well, what they were doing was praying before tearing open the blind bag. "O Lord, Buddha, Allah, souls of heaven and earth," Ramba enthusiastically pleaded, "please let our Jinu summon a top-tier one." A summoning ritual that she had performed since the time of the Jinna god. The procedure done, Jinu took out his summoning paper. "All right, let's do it." With unwavering faith, he tore the paper powerfully. The moment for the endless summoning chain began. But life always slaps people in the face at important moments. Jinu lay flat on the ground, surrounded by low-grade summons. "I opened 3,600 scrolls in just 1 hour. By now, shouldn't some good items have dropped? Why is it all F ranks?" Ramba poked his cheek with a finger. "Stupid, of course not yet," she seriously presented. "Do you think an EX rank like me drops so easily?" To be asked back by Jinu, "Why not? Didn't I hit you on the very first try?" Hearing that, Ramba explained simply, "That was just pure luck." Then she kindly explained the probability of hitting one. Eating 1 scroll is nothing, let alone 1. It must be like 1,000,000 scrolls. Jinu couldn't help but be surprised. "What are you talking about?" Seeing this expression of his, Ramba understood. "Jinu, you really don't know anything about the summoning system, do you?" Jinu blankly repeated. "Summoning system?" At this moment, Ramba started to explain. The total number of summons is exactly 10% of the number of players. 8 billion people equals 800 million summons. There are probably more than 800 million horned caterpillars like the ones you just spun out. She pointed at his face as she added. But the important part is, Ramba's expression was extremely serious. Because we have an isolated status, each type only exists as a single individual. Hearing that, Jinu was surprised to the point of shouting, "What? What?" But this time she could only shrug. "I don't know the reason why either." Ramba continued without haste. "As I said before, the only thing certain right now is that it seems only you can summon the isolated EX rank entities, Jinu." The more she said, the more he felt his future was bleak. There are tens of thousands of different types of summons. And she says there are 800 million of each type. Jinu sweated while calculating the probability. "And I have to spin a unique EX rank one among them?" He became a sad person almost immediately. Winning the jackpot consecutively is even easier than this. Ramba kindly comforted him. "Still, don't worry too much." After that, she added some other information. Once a summon has been spun out, it won't appear again unless you discard it. Take an example. Suppose all 800 million horned caterpillars have been summoned. The last friend is here. I am the 800 millionth friend. If that happens, horned caterpillars will never appear in future summons. Hearing that, Jinnu still couldn't help but feel tired. Still, everything will be very difficult. At this moment, Ramba could only agree. That's right. Jinnu was stuck, so he planned to take a risk. Should I just start opening the mid-grade scrolls? Fortunately, the remaining part of his sanity prevented him in time. No, that would be too inefficient. They're expensive, and the quantity on the market is scarce. Just standing up, Jinnu muttered, "The winning rate is almost zero." But he picked up a paper and raised his voice to declare, "The winning rate is almost zero." But the pleat echoed across the sky. Ramba could only enthusiastically cheer. "Great, you can do it." In the afternoon, the sunset sky brought warm colors shining down on the roof. Jinnu held his neck and lamented, "I'm about to die." Ramba lay face down on the pillow, speaking, "Jinnu, I want a cream bun." He sat blankly, thinking while pinching her cheeks. Thinking back, I spent all the money I earned in half a year in just 2 weeks. Ramba panicked and shouted worriedly. Dark circles. Jinnu is truly almost dead in many senses. Jinnu glanced to one side. He put his hands on his head, eyes looking at the ceiling. I even have to rent a room near the player area just to summon spirit beasts. She spoke softly. Cream bun. Anyway, I can't just keep being a parasite on my parents forever. He sat up, hands on a mattress. Then today we'll go synthesize again. Get up, Ramba. She stretched out, voice full of excitement. Cream bun. Synthesis shop, formerly Hotel 20. That was just recently. After the challenge tower appeared, other buildings also started to change accordingly. For instance, this hotel building suddenly turned into a synthesis shop. I remember the buffet here used to be quite famous too. Jinnu and Ramba stood in front of a machine. He looked down at the number on the paper, voice whispering, "Number 125. She flew up next to him and instructed, "Jinnu, you must not make a mistake. Remember to look carefully before putting them in." Clear. He smiled and answered confidently, "Of course." Jinnu glanced at the screen and saw it was his turn. "It's our turn. Let's go in." Both entered a room. He spoke to her. "Today, I'm counting on you, Ramba." She flapped her wings and replied, "We can do it." The system screen quickly appeared before Jinnu's eyes. Lines of text gradually appeared. "Welcome to the synthesis shop. Try synthesizing your summons. Wind spirit has been registered." He pressed the button on the screen. "Do you want to synthesize the wind spirit?" "Yes." Information started rushing in continuously. Fire Lizard F rank has been sacrificed and disappeared. Windfall F rank has been sacrificed and disappeared. Poison Lizard F rank has been sacrificed and disappeared. He watched until his eyes were dazzled. It's truly a lot. The mechanical sound from the system rang out. Synthesis complete. The level of the EX rank Wind Spirit has increased to 21. The intelligence stat of the EX rank Wind Spirit has increased by 2. Jinnu clapped his hands, but his face wasn't very happy. I spent up to 140,000 summons. Yet she only reached level 21? Ramba excitedly asked. "How is it? Does Jinnu see if I'm strong?" He laughed and answered while thinking to himself, "Our Ramba is the best. The maximum level is 100. At this rate, who knows when it will be finished." A few days later, in a tall and large building, the sound of clicking keys echoed along with humming. Park Chong-suk said happily, "Mr. Byong-jin, today you seem more excited than usual, don't you?" He could only bow his head and reply, "Yes, boss." Park Chong-suk turned the papers over to look, thinking, now that we have established a talent management team, I will pour all my strength into Jinnu to take over this area. Park Chong-suk suddenly turned to ask him, "Byong-jin, what is Jinnu doing right now?" He turned his face and hummed an answer. "Well, it seems like he's just continuously opening summon scrolls. Today he also took more scrolls." He held the document in his hand, his expression a bit surprised. "Still more?" Byong-jin continued. He also asked if he could use the 150 million just received to buy more low-grade summon scrolls. Park Chong-suk lowered the stack of papers to look at him. "What?" Byong-jin put his hand to his chin, rolling his eyes elsewhere. He asked if he could buy them at a price lower than the market price, so for now I said I would reconsider. But recently the Management Bureau has been keeping an eye on us because of taking Hong in such large quantities. What should we do? He lowered his eyes to the pile of paper in his hand, thinking to himself. He is reinvesting a huge amount of money into low-grade summon scrolls that couldn't be sold anyway. There is definitely something going on. Park Chong-suk clenched his fists and spoke. Sell them to him at half price. Byung-jin was startled and jumped up. What? Half price? Byung-jin was startled and jumped up. What? Half price? Park Chong-suk suddenly smiled meaningfully. Don't worry too much. Jinwoo could become Korea's hero in the future. And if later it is revealed that I overcame all difficulties to support him, achieving a higher approval rating is just a small matter. He put his hand on the table and spoke. For now, just do as I say. He put his hand on the table and spoke. For now, just do as I say. The scene changed. Outside the street, the sun is now shining bright. Jinwoo, withered, sat counting papers on an empty plot of land. 1556, 1557, 1558. Ramba asked with a weary tone. Jinwoo, how much longer do we have to do this? I can't even feel my hands anymore. He replied in a flat voice. Until either I die or you do. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, and someone approached slowly. The person spoke up, grabbing both of their attention. Hello. She smiled, hands on her hips, and said, Great to meet you. I'm Ji-ah from the main headquarters. Jinwoo stood up, scratching his head as he replied. Hey there, what wind brings you here? Ji-ah reached out and explained. I came here to discuss the purchase of the summoning scroll you were talking about with the judge last time. He immediately realized the issue and responded. Right, exactly. As I mentioned last time, is there any possibility to negotiate the price? She rested a hand on her cheek, smiling as she said, Actually, we've already had an internal meeting regarding that matter. And after considering your recent contributions, Mr. Beck Jinwoo, Ji-ah continued with a radiant smile. Just for this once, we've decided to give you a special discount, 50% off. He was stunned to hear that. Really? Mr. Park Chong-suk is the best. She quickly added, That's right. And furthermore, Jinwoo was incredibly thrilled by Ji-ah's words. Our team has decided to provide you with an additional 100 million won, taken from the bonus fund for talent managers. She stepped closer and put a finger to her lips, signaling. However, you must keep this absolutely confidential. He clapped his hands excitedly. Oh my God, of course, don't worry about a thing. Ji-ah leaned in close and whispered. And we hope you understand that this is to build a good relationship between you and our side. Mr. Beck Jinwoo. He was overjoyed and replied quickly. I completely understand. After saying that, she stepped back, preparing to leave. Well, you must be busy, so I'll take my leave now. Jinwoo stood still, watching Ji-ah's retreating figure. He smiled to himself. I can really feel the sincerity of that judge wanting to support me all the way. I need to summon an EX ranker quickly to repay him. The sky shifted from afternoon to evening, and Ramba, exhausted, flopped down onto the pile of papers on the ground. Jinwoo, how much longer are we going to keep doing this? I've been praying for just a little more. My hands are literally on fire. He replied to her blankly. Until we pull the trainer and the dragon mage. Ramba started crying and grabbed 2 handfuls of her own hair, shouting, I'm going to go crazy from this paper-tearing sound. Suddenly, a system alert rang out. You have received an F-rank white snake. I have no other choice. Another notification appeared. You have received an F-rank giant beetle. Another notification appeared. You have received an F-rank giant beetle. As Jinwoo's hand tore the paper in two, a blinding light instantly appeared. Please. A loud clap of thunder resounded. The paper was shredded into 4 pieces and flew into the air. What the hell? Jinwoo immediately recalled the scene from before. This effect was identical to when Ramba appeared. The girl standing next to him also watched with wide, shining eyes. Could it be? Now using a low-level summoning scroll. A system notification appeared. Player Beck Jinwoo has received the EX rank Dragon Mage summon. Ramba hugged him tightly in excitement. You did it. You actually did it. Jinwoo was also so happy he burst into tears. Oh my God, I could die happy now. Jinwoo immediately adjusted his mindset. Wait, this is not the time to rest. We can't stop now. We have to ride this gotcha momentum. The girl standing nearby was stunned. Gotcha momentum. He reached out and pulled out another scroll, and this was the moment it exploded. Jinwoo tore it open aggressively. When you're on a lucky streak, you have to push your advantage to get even more. Now using a low-level summoning scroll. Player Beck Jinwoo has received the EX rank trainer summon. Ramba looked at the system board in disbelief. Is this gotcha momentum for real? He was beyond ecstatic and bit his lip. Finally, Jinwoo looked at the people in front of him and thought, finally, those two people are standing there looking at me. I've successfully summoned them. Hongyo raised his head, looked around, and asked, where is this? A system board appeared immediately. Shumand, EX rank trainer. This was originally a summon no one liked because he was only E rank with weak combat abilities. Jinwoo clenched his fists in excitement, but the guy's true value lies in being a training fanatic, a certified maniac who only knows training. Do you think training is a joke? Possession skill grows massively through training, overwhelming and fascinating other summons. Hongyo himself is quite weak, and his basic skills aren't anything special. Give me 5,000 push-ups. I don't know what fatigue is. But once he gains the trainer skill through growth, the trainer unlocks the hidden potential of other summons and increases their growth speed exponentially. Ramba, in his imagination, suddenly became terrifying. Ramba, with this skill, I can make other summons stronger. This is how I'll always stay ahead of other rankers. She immediately showed her disapproval. I really don't want to get stronger. Jinwoo smiled and turned to wave at him. Hongyo, long time no see. He heard him say that and frowned. Hongyo? That nickname. Hongyo immediately recognized Jinwoo. Could you be Jinwoo God? He put his hands on his hips and tilted his face up to answer. That's right. He quickly knelt on one knee respectfully. Sir, this is truly amazing. After being placed in isolation for no apparent reason, I thought I would never see you again. Jinwoo just listened silently and pondered, just as I thought. Both Ramba and Hongyo developed exactly as I raised them. Hongyo lowered his head, his voice loud and clear. It's an honor to see you again. Pokryong also slowly took a step forward. Jinwoo God, she asked a bit shyly, is it really you? Jinwoo God. He was somewhat surprised and thought to himself, this is the first time I've ever heard Pokryong's voice. Dehonk summoné, Dragon Mage. Summoning Dragon Mage, human race, S rank, isolate. She is a magic dropout, but it turns out there is an ancient dragon sleeping in her heart, transforming her into a powerful fire element assassin. Her skills were initially very mediocre, but what would happen if Hongyo awakened her? Possession skill, Explosive Dragon Wave, unleashes dragon-shaped flames forward. Predation, permanently increases the damage of Explosive Dragon Wave. Every time she defeats a final boss-level enemy with this skill, she receives an overpowered skill called Predation. Because without Hongyo, it's impossible to unlock that Predation skill. I am the only player who can use Pokryong effectively. Pokryong was incredibly excited to see Jinwoo. Jinwoo God, I really missed you. He felt a bit smug, the corner of his mouth curling up. Yeah, me too. A great dragon, adorable yet dangerous. Jinwoo adjusted his state and ordered, for now, don't say anything when others are around. And instead of calling me Jinwoo God, just call me Jinwoo. The two heard this and obeyed immediately. Understood. Yes, sir. Yes, Jinwoo. He put his hands in his pockets and looked up at the sky. All right, now let's go home and get some sleep. Inside the quiet room, the curtains half drawn, Jinwoo lay sprawled on the bed, his body completely withered. The three spirits sat curled up together on the floor. Hongyo initiated the conversation. It's been a while, hasn't it? Pokryong replied hurriedly, it really has. He glanced down at Ramba. And you, should I call you Ramba? Her eyes sparkled as she looked up at Hongyo. You're Hongyo, right? We only met about a month before we were separated. Isn't that right? Since I was already an active summon when you were recruited, that means I'm your senior. He crossed his arms, acting indifferent. Let's just say that. Suddenly, Hongyo's expression darkened significantly. However, that means nothing to me. I only have one thing to say. He looked down grimly at the two girls. We are too weak. We still have a long way to go if we want to be of any help to him in the future. That is why, even when he is sleeping, we must continue to train. Hongyo pointed at her. First, Pokryong, Sit down and focus on sensing mana. After I wake up, I will unlock predation for you. Pokryong gave a small nod, looking at him. Predation, I understand. Hungyo quickly cast a sharp, piercing look at Ramba. Ramba saw this and trembled uncontrollably, her expression full of fear. You need to increase your sword swinging speed. So from now on, you'll be doing physical training with me. Physical training? Ramba cried, disagreeing, but I'm a spirit. Hungyo's eyes flashed with a glint. Don't you want to help our master? Ramba stammered in response. Well, of course I do. His eyes immediately locked onto her in the kitchen. Then start swinging that pan. Since it's the first day, we'll just do a light 5,000 repetitions. Ramba was completely panicked. 5,000? Ramba's hand trembled as she tried to reach out to him. Jinnu, before she could call for help, she was hauled away by Hungyo like a piece of luggage. Please, save me. Early morning, a gentle breeze blew through the city. Inside the room, a voice rang out. What? You can't give me any more low-level summoning scrolls. Ji-Ah stood with one hand on her hip and the other raised. That's right. The office just issued a notice. Those are the orders from the main headquarters director. Park Chong-suk was worried and deep in thought. From the director? He should be very busy. Why would he suddenly take notice of such trivial matters? She continued, making his expression worsen. On top of that, they're asking for a detailed report on the use of the low-level summoning scrolls received so far. Park Chong-suk gritted his teeth. Damn it. Ji-Ah rubbed her chin. It seems Director Hee-soo has had a hand in this. He was overwhelmed and asked, That bastard is always trying to oppose my decisions. She crossed her arms and sighed. What do we do now? I've prepared the report documents, but if the Management Bureau cuts off the scroll supply, we won't have anything left to give Jinnu. Park Chong-suk clenched his fist and began to calculate. It was almost time to deliver the next shipment. Suddenly, he remembered something, and his eyes widened. Park Chong-suk glanced at the phone ringing on the desk. Seeing that, she walked closer and asked, What is it? He spoke with a stern voice. Looks like we won't need to provide any more low-level summoning scrolls to him. Park Chong-suk frowned, staring at her. More importantly, he didn't say anything else, only thinking to himself that he needed to settle the score with that bastard Hee-soo. Several messages popped up on the phone on the table. I don't need any more low-level summoning scrolls. I've already gotten what I wanted. Thanks. Scene shift to Gwanak Mountain, near Seonbui Station, Gwacheon City, Gyeonggi Province. Jinnu stepped onto the ground and breathed a sigh of relief. He reached up to shade his eyes from the sun. So this is a normal dungeon. In BOS, there are 4 types of dungeons. Challenge Tower, Daily Dungeon, Normal Dungeon, and Chaos Dragon. First is the Daily Dungeon, where players can collect specific materials every day. Second is the Challenge Tower. Its difficulty is hellish compared to normal dungeons. This is where players test their limits. The rewards are extremely generous, but the death rate is correspondingly high. Third, Chaos Dragon. That is a raid boss that you must form a party to challenge. But since it hasn't been updated yet, I'll save the explanation for later. Except for those 3, every other place is considered a normal dungeon. That's where I'll be entering this time. Jinnu looked at his phone as he walked. In BOS, they're also called tiered dungeons, but in reality, they just appear randomly. He stopped in front of a large mountain. In front of Jinnu was a gate with a warning sign. He bowed his head to observe the situation. After a certain amount of time passes since a dungeon is created, a dungeon break occurs and monsters spill out. I need to resolve this quickly. As Jinnu approached, the gatekeeper spoke. If you intend to enter the dungeon, I need to check your license first. He took out his identification card and handed it over here. The other man took it and examined it quickly. All right, confirmed. Jinnu didn't say anything else and stepped into the gate. Please be careful. A flash of light occurred. Jinnu slowly opened his eyes. Aggressive lightning bolts appeared all around him. Aggressive lightning bolts appeared all around him. The sound of metal rang clearly in the quiet space. A mass of people were rushing in and attacking each other. So this is the current scene, both gloomy and chaotic. Dungeon punishment? The soldiers began to shout. The orcs were advancing, pouring down boiling water. The giant orcs kept climbing up, making the people panic. They quickly shot through its head, causing it to fall. When I was in BOS, it was just a game. so the feeling wasn't realistic at all. But a giant orc saw that and lunged to counterattack. Someone else ran over to help their fallen comrade up. Healer. We need a healer here. Jinu's face darkened as he saw the scene. Is this the face of real war? He closed his eyes, reassuring himself. Gotta stay calm. I just need to do what I always do. A shield quickly covered Jinu. He shouted out loud, and all three of them appeared simultaneously. A system board appeared. EX rank Wind Spirit summoned. X rank Trainer summoned. X rank Dragon Mage summoned. Next, two more boards appeared. D rank Metallic Spirit summoned. D rank Mini Kong summoned. Among D rank summons and healers, none are better than these guys. Sorry. Bongsel was sacrificed for Mini Kong. Jino looked at her and ordered, Ramba, buff attack speed for Hongyo. She smiled brightly and acknowledged the order. He looked at her and called out, Pokryong, get ready to provide fire support for Hongyo from the rear. She gripped her magic staff and answered, Yes, sir. Jinu waved his hand forward. Mini Kong headed straight for the orc boss. It immediately leaped high to prepare its attack. The rules of the orc punishment dungeon are simple. A loud explosion occurred, and the surrounding rocks shattered. Mini Kong is currently facing off against the giant orcs. Just need to take down the giant orc in the very back, and everything will be over. It saw someone attacking it, so it raised its weapon high and roared. The orc swung down hard on its head, but it raised its hand to block it. Ramba stood outside, constantly buffing strength. Hongyo just stood silently observing without saying a word. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurred on the castle walls. His eyes flashed, and with just a few sword strikes, he took down quite a few orcs. He is at a completely different level compared to Hongyo at the beginning of the game. He rubbed his chin and smiled. Anyway, it seems this is even easier than I thought. The soldiers were overjoyed to see reinforcements. Allies are here. They're so strong. Are we going to survive? Mini Kong growled and lunged at the giant orcs. The metallic spirit kept healing them. HP plus, HP plus, HP plus. Ramba dodged the orcs' attacks and provoked them. Mad yet? Jinu almost took a hit and was terrified. Ramba, stop fooling around. She heard his voice, startled, and turned back. Sorry. Hongyo lunged from out of nowhere and punched it hard. How dare you throw an axe at my master? Pokryong then lifted her magic staff and chanted spells in an obscure language. She created a large source of fire and controlled it to fly up. Come on. A dragon shot out from the magic staff. Fire Dragon Explosion. Fire Dragon Explosion unleashed dragon-shaped flames forward. The orcs were burned by the flames and screamed. Even so, some stayed standing despite being burned to such a degree. The sound of boots clattered in a hurried rhythm. Hongyo didn't hesitate and delivered a critical strike. The head of the giant orc fell to the ground like a ball. Mechanical sounds played. Dungeon conquered. Ramba raised her arms in excitement. Absolutely awesome. Pokryong also leveled up. The EX rank Dragon Mage's level increased to 5. The EX rank Dragon Mage's intelligence increased by 2. He wasn't about to be outdone and leveled up along with her. The EX rank Trainer's level increased to 5. The EX rank Trainer's critical rate increased by 1%. As for Jinu, he received a gift from the system. Your reward has arrived. Intermediate Summoning Scroll X1. He couldn't help but widen his eyes in amazement. Awesome. An Intermediate Summoning Scroll is worth 500,000 won. I earned 500,000 in just 3 minutes. While the spirits were cheering, Jinu was thinking about other things. I need to find the next dungeon immediately. Congrats on leveling up. He clenched his fist. Jinu felt like a whole new horizon had opened up for him. Time to change my life by grinding nonstop. The scene changed to the front of a large, luxurious building. Park Chong-suk slumped over, resting his head on his hand on the table. Ji-ah stood nearby, arms crossed, and asked, Exactly where did you get the confidence to make that bet? He answered gloomily, But that bastard started it first. The director sitting in the middle rubbed his hands and spoke up. Come on, everyone, please calm down. Hayu smirked and said bluntly, It seems Judge Park Chong-suk is wasting the budget, so I'm just offering some advice. What kind of talent management team is this that can't even train one decent talent? The talents Park Chong-suk trained haven't even been chosen as national representatives once. Have they? Are you acting like this because of the 3rd dungeon record set recently? Is it just because of that? Park Chong-suk, no matter how angry, could only think to himself, Im Hee-soo, that bastard. I want to say something to refute it, but the rankers Im Hee-soo trained are chosen as national representatives every year. He might be an arrogant prick, but it's true. He has the skill. But I won't just sit here and take it anymore. He thought carefully before asking, what are you going to do if the talent I trained is chosen as a national representative? Hayu raised his head, speaking in a haughty voice. So I want to bet on that. There are only 10 national representative spots maximum. Let's see whose talent climbs higher on the rankings. He changed his expression and answered, fine. He laughed deviously and leaned in close. The loser has to publicly admit the other judge is better and resign. The penalty for breaking the agreement is 1 billion won. Park Chong-suk didn't back down and retorted immediately. Shall we sign the contract right now? The director in the middle tried to intervene in confusion. Please, stop arguing. Park Chong-suk didn't back down and retorted immediately. Shall we sign the contract right now? The director in the middle tried to intervene in confusion. Please, stop arguing. He bowed his head slightly, eyes closed, and replied, I know. Suddenly, Park Chong-suk's finger movements halted. But I trust Jinwoo. The way he acts will surely provide us with important information. She heard that and intended to say more, but was interrupted. Even if you say that. Suddenly, Director Chong-suk saw something strange and stood up from his chair. What's wrong? Byung-jin reported in a hurry. You asked me to investigate the player who recently soloed dozens of D-rank dungeons. It's Jinwoo. He and Ji-ah could barely believe their ears and shouted. What? She asked him in confusion. A player who just registered less than a month ago is clearing D-rank dungeons in under 5 minutes? Park Chong-suk laughed contentedly. See? I told you. He was incredibly excited and raised both hands. What did I say? Didn't I tell you Jinwoo was the top of the top? That Longdu, that heart slashed that thing. Word is too outdated. Park Chong-suk, though happy, was still slightly panicked as he thought. That's right, I always trust him. On Jinwoo's side, he stepped out of the dungeon gate. Jinwoo looked around and thought to himself, my eye for talent is spot on. Inside the small room, the light from the ceiling shone down. Jinwoo looked at his account balance and was excited. He smiled until his cheeks turned red. 16 million won. I earned 16 million won. Images from the past raced through Jinwoo's mind. 4 straight days of grinding like a maniac through 160 D-rank dungeons. Everyone fought together. He looked at the pile of money and couldn't help but cry with joy. And this is the money earned after selling off all the intermediate summoning scrolls. This truly is the result of my sweat, effort, and tears. Aren't we the ones who poured our sweat out? Finally, our time has come. Jinwoo sat up straight from his bed and began to calculate. All right, first things first, I need to split this money into different accounts. This account is for living expenses, rent, utilities, food, and other miscellaneous things. And this one is my savings account. I'll put 10 million won in here every month to take care of myself. He suddenly looked thoughtfully at his phone. Earning 10 million a month felt like a dream. Jinwoo looked at the balance on his phone and finally decided to use it for game top-ups in an account dedicated strictly to the player. All the money here will be used solely to invest in my summons. Money is only a part of it. The most important thing right now is to raise my own value as a player. While grinding dungeons, the kids have all surpassed level 30. So it's time to equip and upgrade their runes. To do that, the only way is to grind daily dungeons. Jinwoo pondered for a moment and said to himself, to clear daily dungeons quickly, I need a core summoning team. He used his phone to open the app. I wonder if there are any good ones for sale on the market. Jinwoo was startled and his jaw dropped. He shouted when he looked at the price list. What? C rank, and the average price is 20 million? Why is it so ridiculously expensive? Thunderbank is 20 million. B rank goes up to 200 million. And for A rank and S rank, you have to search until your eyes bleed. I don't see anyone selling them at all. At this rate, my account will evaporate in the blink of an eye. Jinwoo sighed and hugged his phone. Using a high-level summoning scroll, the rate for B rank is only 1%, so that price is understandable. He immediately pulled himself together. But that's okay. Jinwoo navigated his phone and opened someone's personal profile. He called the person and held the phone to his ear. This is why I prepared a backup plan. Tae-seop burst through the door unexpectedly and shouted, "Appraiser!" Park Chong-suk was sitting inside and calmly asked, "What's the rush?" He replied anxiously, "We just received a new request from player Jinwoo." Hearing that made him jump up. "What?" Park Chong-suk changed his attitude and walked over to grab Tae-seop's hand. "What did he request? Tell me quickly. You scared me. What kind of creature is this full of hair?" He found the old man strange, but had to deal with it. He said if we agree, he will provide new information. Tae-seop held his phone out in front of Park Chong-suk. "Here, this is the content. A shopping list for summons." After reading it, his eyes almost popped out. "Buy all of this?" He could only explain. "He wants us to spend the money to buy all of this." Park Chong-suk worriedly put his hands on his head. "If the headquarters was willing to spend money on all this, I wouldn't be using C-rank summons." "Did he say what we would get in return if we bought it?" Tae-seop's next sentence made him less worried. "He promised to share the secret to conquering daily dungeons in the shortest time possible." Park Chong-suk raised his head to look at him. Not just the second or fourth dungeon, but the entire weekly dungeon list. Tae-seop quickly replied, "Yes, that's correct." He put his hands on his hips and pondered. "He means he'll reveal everything, not just one. That's a tough bargain." Park Chong-suk smiled wide enough to show his teeth. "All right, I've got the situation. Let me try discussing it directly with the director." A while later, he slammed his hand on the table in frustration. "So annoying. Those old fossils are truly a bunch of foolish blockheads." Park Chong-suk stood up angrily. "No wonder our country is always at the bottom of the rankings." Baek Jinwoo asked confusedly, "What's wrong with him?" Ji understood, so she felt normal about this scene. The proposal wasn't approved, but in truth, the request was a bit excessive. She crossed her arms and sighed, watching him scream to blow off some steam. If only every appraiser was as passionate as he is. He approached and asked, "So, what did the director tell you?" Park Chong-suk's face turned red with anger as he replied. "The old man said, I have to provide evidence or let him perform first before we talk about spending money." Hearing him, Ji also had to ponder. Without support summons, how can he clear the stages? Park Chong-suk clenched his fists and shouted fiercely, "If that information is true, wouldn't it be a massive hit? It's truly an open gold mine. Yet those idiots at headquarters don't realize its value." She suddenly spoke, calming him down. "That sounds really disappointing. Selling such valuable information to headquarters for only 1.3 billion. Don't you think that price is too cheap?" Park Chong-suk asked back hesitantly. "Only 1.3 billion. Ji put her hand to her chin and said slowly, "Mr. Appraiser." She smiled and made an offer. "How about I pay for this out of my own pocket?" Park Chong-suk stared at her in amazement. "I just remembered. Ji is part of the Daesung Group family. Ji the fourth granddaughter of Daesung, the leading economic conglomerate in South Korea. She was raised according to the standards of a wealthy heiress. But Ji was more interested in players than managing the company. And the player who has caught her on most recently is none other than Jinwoo, a rookie who possesses an unimaginably large amount of information, even daring enough to bargain with the government. Right, why don't we form a private management team just to serve him? We will invest heavily so he can extract all the information, then split the profits. Our approach will be completely different from the current talent management team." He asked again, "Are you sure? That's a huge amount of money." Ji wasn't worried at all, her tone cheerful. "Are you worried about my bank account balance?" Park Chong-suk smiled awkwardly and replied, "Not at all." Ji crossed her arms, tapping her fingers lightly on her arm. "You don't need to worry about money." But before deciding, she smiled and continued to state her requirement. "I need to meet Jinwoo one more time first." Ji sat with her hands on the table, legs crossed, as if waiting for someone. She heard a sound and turned her head slightly. The shop employee bowed respectfully. "Please, make yourself at home." Jinwoo walked in and turned his head back at him. Feeling a bit nervous, he rubbed his neck and thought, "Does the headquarters really show sincerity? I'm answering what you asked for last time. Shall we meet in person to discuss the details? I'll send you the address in time." Who would have thought they would act so quickly for just a piece of information like that? 1.3 billion is not an easy amount of money to earn. I am currently sitting in a high-end restaurant that makes five-star hotels look inferior. I'm being treated so well that I don't even know how to react. It's definitely worth selling the information. A voice cut through Jinu's train of thought. You're here? Jinu glanced at the source of the voice and saw her standing up. Aha. I almost fainted when I looked up her background. Appearance, family background, talent. The player's genius of the century, sky-high selection scores. I didn't expect the third-generation granddaughter of the Daesung conglomerate to work for headquarters. Ji-ah walked over, placed a hand on her chest, and greeted politely. Thank you for coming. He saw she was alone and wondered. Did you come alone? Did you come alone? Ji-ah smiled brightly. That's right. What I want to talk to you about today is not related to headquarters. It's a personal matter. Both sat at the table and started talking. Unfortunately, she placed a hand on her cheek and said to Jinu, I'm afraid headquarters will find it difficult to provide any further support. Appraiser Park Chong-suk tried his best, but there were too many opponents. Who are you trying to fool? He said while picking up his food. If that's the case with headquarters, then we're helpless. Regardless, I will set the #1 spot myself. I won't give them any more information. Suddenly Jia added, making Jinu pause. Instead, I have a proposal. He stopped moving and raised his head to look at her. Excuse me. Ji-ah placed a glass of water in front of Jinu. Exclusively for you, Jinu. I'm planning to establish a private management company. He was a bit surprised by her words. A management company with only one person. This offer isn't bad. Unlike headquarters, which has to operate cautiously, a private organization only chases profits, and I can completely deliver those profits. But more importantly, what I need right now is a connection with someone who appreciates my information the most and has the resources for me to utilize. Ji-ah spoke up again, interrupting that train of thought. Together with Daesung's professionalism, I am ready to support everything Jinu needs. Jinu couldn't help but be excited and pondered. Where could I find a better place than Daesung? After all, money never lies. He happily drank the water before speaking. We've only met a few times, but you seem like a wonderful person. Ji also smiled brightly and complimented Jinu. With a talent like Jinu, that's obvious. Then I will explain in detail along with the contract. If you agree, tomorrow I will visit that empty plot of land. By the way, you should check the summon you requested. He was a bit surprised that everything seemed a bit hurried. So soon? I haven't even signed the contract yet. She suddenly bowed her head, her voice dropping a little. Well, I prepared everything in advance. No matter what your decision is, just consider a gift. Jinu's eyes sparkled as he looked at Ji. That's crazy. A tycoon buying a gift. The scene changed to the side of a mountain. Jin walked along and complained, Oh, Dad, is he coming here again today? She looked extremely gloomy. What has he been busy with lately that he isn't contacting me? I heard he even has his own place now. Suddenly someone walked by, making her raise her head to look. It was her. Looking at Ji, she couldn't help but praise her internally. She's so beautiful, isn't she? Wait, her face looks like I've seen it on Insta before. Jin put her hand to her chin, searching through her memories. She immediately remembered the post she had seen. Jin was so excited her mouth hung open. Isn't that girl you, Ji? In the bright, blinding sunlight, heavy breathing echo. Hongyo shouted with great momentum. More. You have to push yourself to the limit to grow. Ramba, drenched in sweat, looked haggard and replied, I've reached my limit. He seemed to notice something and his eyes darted around. Hongyo took off his glasses and whispered to both of them. Everyone be quiet. Someone is coming. Don't talk. Ramba quickly lay on Jinu's head. Resting a bit, he turned around and saw Ji approaching. You're here. She constantly fanned herself. Yes, hello. It looks like you've been training since morning. Ramba quickly regained her vitality and flew up. That's right, just light training. Along with your summons. So you built your team like this. There are a few summons I've never seen. Jinu waved his hand, signaling them to leave. That's right, that's my core force. Go back to training. I'll introduce you formally later. Ji raised her hand and took out something. All right, first I'll give you a gift. A system board suddenly appeared in front of him, with large letters written on it. Player Ji is proposing a trade. Please review the other party's offer carefully. Just like in the game Battle of Summoners, which supports trading between players, quick selling summons at a discount when buying in bulk. I want to swap an A-rank Sky Seal Golem for another A-rank. Selling 500 items for 2,000 DM reward reset vouchers as a quote. I have a mutated A-rank Spirit Walk, accepting trade. D-rank Spirit Walk, pressure strike. If you dare to scam and run away, he pointed at the scammer. That guy did it. You could die from a curse from the system window. An offer appeared, making Jinnu ponder. Oz trade list. Jinnu, did she really take them all? Do you accept the trade with player Jia? His body was suddenly covered by a gentle blue light. Transaction complete. Jinnu was incredibly grateful and bowed repeatedly. Thank you very much. That is an extremely valuable gift. Jia smiled brightly and crossed her arms. It's nothing. She opened her bag and rummaged for things inside. Then she held the paper in front of him and asked, "Shall we start working?" She quickly explained for him to understand. The name of the management company I took from our last names. 70% of the shares belong to Jinnu, 25% to me, and 5% will be given to appraiser Park Chong-soo. The appraiser will still stay at headquarters and continue to support us. We also plan to hire Byong Jin and Tae Seop as employees. But aren't those two at headquarters? They submitted their resignations this morning because I paid them triple their old salary. Jinnu held the paper in his hand and hesitated slightly. But I'm truly grateful. But 70% for me? Are you sure? Ah said calmly. Consider it the way I place my bet. Even if I only have 25%, I believe I can still maximize the value of that figure. Her gaze immediately became sharp. Furthermore, because this is a one-person company, voting rights aren't important. What's important is the relationship between me and Jinnu. She glanced at him as he was stamping his fingerprint, thinking, now is the time to cast aside greed and strengthen our relationship. Jinnu took out an ink pad and pressed his hand into it to get ink to stamp the paper. I was extremely happy to see that. Contract complete, the two shook hands happily. I look forward to our pleasant collaboration. Me too. On Hongyo's side, he accidentally saw something. He saw it and stared fixedly at that spot. Then, in a flash, Hongyo jumped inside, leaving Jia confused. What? What is it? A loud scream echoed from inside the bushes. He dragged her by both feet. Hongyo flipped Jin upside down and shook her back and forth continuously. Auto hunt. Jinnu saw her here and asked, Jin, what are you doing here? Jinnu frowned and questioned. What do you mean? Jin, in a disheveled state, didn't answer but dodged with her eyes. He immediately guessed and said, Are you following Jia because you're a fan? As soon as she heard that, she hurriedly refuted. What follow? I was just curious, so I came along. Jia's gone. Jinnu's accusing voice struck Jin's heart. Then it's clear you were pursuing her, right? He sighed, leaned down, and asked further. And when you got here, you were even spying on us. She was dissatisfied and shouted angrily. Fine, fine, I'm wrong. Jin ran over angrily to question. But what about you? How do you know each other? She widened her eyes, repeatedly interrogating. You used some trick, right? Why are you two going together? Jinnu rolled his eyes, speechless and lamented. So headache, he mused thoughtfully. The contract has a clause about family, so they would meet sooner or later. At that time, Jia promised. Since I plan to greet your family anyway, this is convenient. Jin, learning this, murmured dejectedly. Jia wants to meet me? Seeing that, Jinnu was speechless and silently added, but not right now. The next second, she suddenly laid down and threw a tantrum. Tell me quickly. Being petulant, he couldn't take it anymore and breathed out. Jinnu pondered for a moment before opening his mouth. It happened like this. After listening, Jin concluded. So in short, you used to be a quite famous gamer, and you were the one who just broke the record in a low-level dungeon. She suspiciously drew a conclusion. That's why you met Jia when you went to headquarters. He nodded drowsily in agreement. That's right. Jin fell into thought. The next question immediately made Jinnu jump. I remember back then you played some mobile game for a long time. Was it that one? He hurriedly denied. No, that's not it. That's a different game. I only played Battle of Summoners for about a year. Inside, he couldn't help but tell himself, I still can't reveal myself as Saint Jinnu. She exclaimed with great interest. Even if you only played for a year for such a trashy game, that's a very long time, isn't it? Each word was like a needle pricking Jinnu's heart. Even so, facing Jin's teasing, he could only smile helplessly. Who would have thought his gaming addiction would be useful at a time like this? Looking at the innocent face in front of him, a thought rose in Jinnu's heart. It's not that I don't trust you. That thought quietly arose in his head. But risk can happen with everything. The painful scenes of that year rushed back, making Jinnu tighten his resolve. Those family members who have taken care of me for the past 3 years, I cannot let them fall into danger. His gaze gradually became determined. I need to be stronger to protect my family. Then I'll consider revealing my identity. At this moment, she suddenly muttered, "But why did you only tell me now?" Jinnu scratched his head and replied lightly, "I was going to tell you anyway, and there's nothing to hide. I'll explain to Mom and Dad later, so remember to keep this a secret for a while." Jin questioned with a bit of resentment. "What? You have your own reasons, understood." Meanwhile, they could only stand there screaming helplessly. Hungyo glanced coldly. The dark elf Pokryong had now sat on top of Ramba. While he was pouncing on it, Jinnu suddenly spoke up. One more thing about that dark elf." She was startled when she heard it, wondering why she had such an expression. His voice dropped. "If you intend to raise it, you should find a black wolf to use along with. Without it, you won't even be able to unleash 10% of its power." Jin was typing and asked back in confusion, "Black wolf? Is there that kind of summon too?" Jinnu clicked his tongue. "It's no wonder you don't know, because it's beer rank." Hearing that, she asked helplessly, "How can I get a beer rank 1 now?" Saying that, Jin lowered her head and searched on the device. After a while, she suddenly groaned dejectedly. "Brother." Hearing her voice, he asked suspiciously, "What's wrong?" Jin asked with a stiff face. "You want me to buy this? 500 million. I'd probably have to starve for 20 years to have enough." Looking at the price list of the gray wolf, Jinnu laughed and reassured her. "Stay calm," he said without hesitation, giving his guarantee. "I will get it for you in just 1 month." But the only response was her doubting laugh. "It's a whole 500 million. Jin chuckled, half believing and half teasing. "Since becoming a gamer, have you started picking up the habit of showing off?" "Forget it. I'll save the money and buy it myself later." Under the pure sunlight, a gentle smile bloomed on Jinnu's lips. Then he kindly reminded her, "Don't get so moved that you cry when you receive the gift." Saying that, Jinnu walked away. "Training's over. Let's go home." Leaving her suspiciously looking after him, feeling something was strange. Jin hugged the dark elf, who was in a state of exhaustion and extreme fear, and frowned in thought. "It feels like my brother has turned into a completely different person." The sky was deep blue, the sun brilliant. A week later, and he stood watching everyone unload the cargo. Jinnu spoke with some suspicion. "What is this?" She smiled brightly and introduced, "This is the equipment you will have to wear every time you go into a daily dungeon." Happily continued summarizing. "The first product of our company is information." He asked while wearing the equipment. "Information?" She couldn't help but boast. "We will sell dungeon clearing video clips at an exorbitant price." Saying that, looked at the equipment and said, "And this modern device set is indispensable for that work." On the pocket, a small camera is also attached. When worn, the entire surrounding scene will be recorded in 3D. She chuckled and added, "It's very light and elastic, so you won't feel uncomfortable." Only a few seconds later, Tae-Sia put on his glasses, fingers sliding into the gloves, his movements terrifyingly calm. In the blink of an eye, a complete team appeared, ready to finish recording. Jinnu widened his eyes, silently marveling. "These things make me feel more pressure than fighting monsters." He nodded in confusion, probing. "Since this is my first time entering the second dungeon, I'm not sure if everything will be okay." "Will it be all right?" Smiled gently, reassuring. "It's okay. We'll only take the best clips to edit." Receiving the answer, he stood still and replied, "Thank you." Before stepping through the gate, Jinnu turned his head to send a message. "By the way, may I ask, if I break the national record as soon as I enter, is that all right?" Hearing the question, she exclaimed in surprise, Well, that's fine." Internally, she couldn't help but wonder, Didn't you just say you were afraid it wouldn't go smoothly? Surely he's just joking, right? Or is that 1.3 billion causing pressure? Regardless, I still hurriedly comforted him. Just relax, I don't mind. Just play comfortably like when you were a gamer. He smiled and quickly agreed. Yes, I understand. Having said that, Jinwoo decisively stepped into the teleportation gate. In his head, thoughts kept appearing. The national record for the second dungeon is 7 minutes. With this situation, on the other side of the gate, a dark space is waiting. Jinwoo wore a confident smile, silently weighing in his mind. I might break it as easily as playing a game. Completion time will directly determine player ranking, just like most other games. Completion time will directly determine player ranking, just like most other games, because without them, you can barely do anything useful. It truly lives up to its name as a trash game. This is a defensive-type dungeon. Usually, you had to hold out against the undead army for 30 minutes. However, clear time still carries extremely important meaning. It's just called defense for the sake of it. In reality, everything will end as soon as the Lich boss is destroyed. Therefore, rushing straight to take down the boss has become the most popular strategy. Jinwoo touched the camera on his chest and commented, "The equipment seems to be working quite well. Therefore, rushing straight to take down the boss has become the most popular strategy." Jinwoo touched the camera on his chest and commented, "The equipment seems to be working quite well. You have set up a total of 3 teams. Which team do you want to summon? Team A, Team B, Team C. Each player can create up to 3 different lineups." Jinwoo didn't hesitate to make his choice. "I've already divided the teams for normal dungeon runs, PvP, and daily dungeons." The next second, a series of system screens appeared. EX rank trainer summoned. C rank battle police chief summoned. D rank mini kong summoned. On his right, 2 more people appeared. C rank light priest summoned. D rank golden fairy summoned. After the team appeared completely, the system screen popped up. The Lich's undead army is flooding in. Hold out until reinforcements arrive. A light blue notification box appeared, displaying clear text. Time remaining, 30 minutes. The official countdown officially began, ticking down from 29 minutes and 59 seconds. On the other side, the Lich waved its hand, signaling the undead legion to charge forward. Faced with the sudden onslaught, the Mini Kong beat its chest and let out a roar. It snatched up a skull, the strength in its grip enough to crush it to pieces in an instant. The Mini Kong slammed its fist hard into the ground with full force. Looking at the skeleton lying on the ground, he said excitedly, "Come on." Jinwoo waved his hand confidently and gave the order, "Let's move out." Everyone, high in the air, the grim-looking Lich observed everything. In the distance, the undead legion was charging frantically. While Jinwoo was talking, Hungyo's gaze drifted toward the hidden camera. At first, he didn't say a word, only giving a slight nod in agreement. "Let us take this high ground first." Seeing this, Jinwoo clicked his tongue, thinking to himself, "This kid Hungyo is sharp." As soon as he saw us recording, he clammed up immediately. On the system screen, the time remaining was displayed as 27 minutes and 59 seconds. He glanced at it and calculated thoughtfully. It took exactly 2 minutes to get here. Jinwoo's eyes froze when he saw the Gideons being cornered by monsters on all sides, with more chasing them from behind. Without hesitation, Hungyo rushed forward, swinging his sword to cut down the monsters. On the other side, the Mini Kong was also putting its strength into pulling off a skull. It roared fiercely and swung its arm back, preparing to throw it. The Mini Kong hurled the skull hard toward the incoming monsters. Seeing the scene, he couldn't help but shudder. Mini Kong and Hungyo should be fine. It's a good thing they're my summons. Jinwoo quickly pushed those thoughts aside to observe the Lich in the distance. Then he stood still, gave a slight smile, and commanded, "Sheriff, get ready." A sense of pride welled up inside him. This summoned sheriff was a long-range shooter with extreme accuracy. HP -1, HP -2, but because the damage was so pathetic, no one bothered using it before. Some players watching were dumbfounded and questioned. "You hung AFK for 32 hours and still couldn't finish the target?" But thinking of the next scene, Jinwoo happily calculated, Yet it's actually a boss in the second low-level dungeon because the Lich there doesn't have much HP. The next second, he suddenly raised his hand to stop it, leaving the sheriff puzzled. Wait, don't fire yet. Jinnu turned back and ordered, Radiance, cast your blessing. A surge of power suddenly enveloped the gun in its hands. He nodded slightly, musing quietly. The effect of this buff is very simple. Opposite them, the information screen appeared above its head, showing a dark protection layer. Jinnu calculated confidently. It will remove the Lich's immunity to long-range attacks. Seeing that everything was under control, he curled the corner of his mouth and spoke. Good. Now follow the command. The sheriff immediately raised its gun and began firing. At the same time, Hungyo was frantically slashing through the undead legion. Seeing a monster about to launch a sneak attack, the mini-Kong lunged forward. It slammed down with terrifying force, shattering the monster into pieces. In a split second, the monsters had completely surrounded them, cold spear tips waiting to strike. The mini-Kong froze, its movement cut short. Meanwhile, on the other side, Radiance was still continuously casting blessings. The two kept casting blessings, enhancing the sheriff's power. It didn't disappoint, firing continuously with a blank expression. Hearing the sound of gunfire, Jinnu's face turned pale with frustration. Seeing such tiny damage, he was speechless. As expected, no matter how you look at it, its HP -2 damage looks pathetic compared to the others. Still, watching its serious demeanor, Jinnu couldn't help but tell himself, but at least the opponent's HP is gradually going down. The bullets were firing, but the damage was like a casual stroll. After shooting forever, it finally annoyed the boss. Looking at the enraged Lich, he couldn't help but exclaim. Normally, with this level and these weak runes, it would take forever to finish. The countdown kept decreasing. 26 minutes and 15 seconds remained, while the mini-Kong kept getting HP plus buffs. Jinnu sighed slightly. That's why everyone thinks it's slow and ignores it. Meanwhile, its blessing stack was constantly increasing. HP plus, HP plus, HP plus. Seeing that, he paused and thought to himself, but in an instant, a monster jumped up, startling both of them. Taking advantage of the moment, the rest of the group quickly lunged to ambush the mini-Kong. The monster let out a shrill laugh, a grotesque sound that seemed to tear through space. Its eyes locked onto Jinnu, who was wearing a cryptic smile. While he was lost in thought, a figure suddenly lunged forward. That only applies to ordinary players. Without a sound of warning, a blade from behind slashed through the monster's head. Jinnu glanced at Hungyo, who was coldly approaching him, and pondered. As for me, I have Hungyo in my hands. He stood there, letting the boy handle the monsters, his mind constantly calculating. Just use Hungyo's skill to awaken its potential, then equip the right rune set and skills. Jinnu's eyes flicked toward the sheriff, silently adding, even a high-level Lich would be finished in a single shot. In a flash, the Lich suddenly froze, and to the horror of the undead army, it abruptly toppled backward. Within a split second, the system screen popped up with a notification, dungeon cleared. Completion time, for minutes 12 seconds. You had just set a new record in Korea. You have achieved a special achievement. He couldn't help but start boasting, this spoon-wielding assassin strategy is top tier. Outside, Tae-seop exclaimed in disbelief. I didn't expect him to dare start his record-breaking journey in the second dungeon. Ji mused. Is it too early to do this? She lowered her voice, muttering, it's only been a week since we gave him those summons. Oh well, even if he doesn't break the record, we still have to cheer for him. Hearing that, Baekjin just bowed his head and sighed. Fair point. Then he blurted out, testing the waters, but can Jinnu really break all the daily dungeon records? Seeing that confused expression, Byong-jin quickly explained, that's not what I meant. Breaking the second day record is legendary. No argument there. But he didn't bother explaining how he'll get past the other dungeons. He looked toward the revenue board and continued. Korea is full of players with a year of experience. What if he's just bragging? I'll coldly cut him off. Are you worried? That icy tone immediately made Byong-jin fall silent. She didn't mind and smiled lightly. I'm using my own money to invest in this anyway. The next words immediately made both of them widen their eyes in shock. Even if what you fear happens, I guarantee your careers. Those who have trusted me won't be affected. In their eyes, Ji-ah was now an angel with wings. Of course, your salaries will remain the same. The two were moved to tears, hugging each other tightly. This is truly a dream job. I will definitely devote myself to this place. She shook her head and smiled helplessly to herself. Because I have the capability to do so. For a fleeting moment, Ji-ah's gaze became sharp. Thinking of him, she couldn't help but quietly remark, plus Jinwoo, he's definitely still hiding a lot of his tricks. The question before Jinwoo stepped into the portal suddenly came to mind. Would it be okay if I break the national record the moment I step in? A suspicious thought suddenly appeared in her head. It was as if these dungeons were nothing to him. Right at that moment, a shout of astonishment rang out. The record has just been broken, followed by panicked cries. Which record? The second dungeon for beginners took only 4 minutes and 12 seconds. In front of the screen, everyone couldn't help but wonder, did he shave off 3 whole minutes from the old record? What kind of monster did this? Looking at that familiar face, the person gasped in shock. It's Jinwoo. Tae-seop also couldn't help but blurt out, this is insane. On the screen was the ranking board. 1. Jinwoo. 2. Kang Jeon-ho. Byung-jin's jaw dropped in disbelief. The two of them started chattering excitedly, unable to believe this had happened. He's genuinely incredible. Meanwhile, Ji-ah stood in the back, deep in thought, breaking the record on the first try. The excitement hit her, making her hands tremble. She already had the answer. So, the plan had truly succeeded. The battle concluded. The sun quietly rose at the horizon, and the portal appeared. Jinwoo stood there with his hands on his hips, his eyes full of confidence. He turned off the camera, reminding himself he still had things to handle before logging out. Looking at the virtual screen in front of him, Jinwoo smiled and calculated. From now on, it's going to be a non-stop grinding journey. At this moment, the screen displayed a choice. Do you want to automatically fight with this lineup? In BOS, you only need to clear the daily dungeon once to auto-grind, which means as long as my summons keep repeating that, the rewards will automatically fill my pockets. Thinking this, he didn't hesitate and chose yes. The next second, Hungyo vanished, replaced by Ramba, an EX rank wind fairy summon. Jinwoo smiled lightly and gave the order, Ramba, I leave the second dungeon grind to you. Jinwoo smiled lightly and gave the order, Ramba, I leave the second dungeon grind to you. Old memories rushed back into his mind, like a slow-motion film. She fell to her knees in despair, whining, I'd rather grind. Please, master, let me go grind. All right, after the assignment, he calculated the next step. Great, now just clear the remaining dungeons like this. I'll live here forever. After that, I'll harvest the loot from the AFK grinding. After the assignment, he calculated the next step. Great, now just clear the remaining dungeons like this. I'll live here forever. After that, I'll harvest the loot from the AFK grinding. Before stepping through the portal, he didn't forget to give a final instruction. I'm counting on you, Ramba. Ramba, lying on top of the mini-Kong, excitedly promised, Understood. Leave it to me. On the other side, the portal also opened. Through the light from the portal, Jinwoo gradually emerged. As soon as he stepped out, he froze in doubt. What hit his eyes was Tae-seop rolling out a carpet respectfully. Welcome back. Accompanied by the worshipful faces of Ji-ah and Baek Jinwoo. I always believed in you. Jinwoo was a bit flustered as he handed over the equipment. Oh yes. All the recorded videos are in here. He hesitated and asked, Do you need any more help? She smiled gently and nodded quickly. Definitely. On the other side, he received the equipment and exclaimed emotionally, Thank you. Thank you so much. Ji-ah professionally offered her assurance. We will keep it strictly confidential. Don't worry about the news leaking out. But Jinwoo responded with indifference. I don't really care if a new record is leaked. This made her ask back suspiciously. What did you say? He coldly made his request. Instead, just protect my family well. Inside, he couldn't help but worry. The gangs were still rampant across Korea. But since Ji-ah was in charge, they would likely tighten security. Ji-ah was silent, lowering her eyes as if calculating something. Finally, she nodded in agreement. Fine, I will protect them, even if I have to use the power of Daesung. Meanwhile, in a dark room, Komodo opened its mouth wide, ready to swallow its prey. As it was eating heartily, a notification appeared above Jinu's head. Dungeon cleared. Time: 3 minutes 10 seconds. He smiled smugly. Since he was recording, he used Komodo to clear it. But with this lineup, I could even set a world record, couldn't I? Looking at Komodo lying there satisfied, Jinu calculated silently. Just equip the movement speed runes for this Komodo and maximize the speed buff of the Wind Fairy. Breaking the record is simple. If I use Hongyo to awaken its potential, it might take only a minute. Thinking this, he pressed the stop recording button. After finishing everything, Jinu immediately turned around and stepped into the portal. That's the end of the recording for day 3. Fourth dungeon. The fourth dungeon is where you earn defensive runes. It has a very unique characteristic, and that is, he shivered, hugging his body, screaming internally. It was so cold here that his movement speed dropped drastically. Jinu reached out to select and complained, "It's freezing to death." At the same time, 2 animals appeared, and the system screen popped up. Summon C-Rank Ice Cat. Summon B-Rank Wind Fairy. The next second, a series of other notifications followed. Summon B-Rank Golem Titan. Summon C-Rank Horn Fairy. Summon X-Rank Dragon Muff. The Ice Cat appeared and quickly dissipated the cold. He couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Here, you must have summons that possess cold resistance skills, and among them, the Ice Cat is the #1 choice. Jinna looked into the distance. Let's see. On the other side, a group of monsters was charging frantically. He wasn't afraid and calmly said, "Golem Titan." Receiving the order, Golem Titan excitedly waved its hands, amplify the golem's protective shield. And without stopping, Jinu immediately turned to call the Wind Fairy, silently calculating. Use the Wind Fairy's speed boost to make us glide quickly. The Wind Fairy gently flew over and landed on its shoulder. The Golem Titan also held out its hand for the 3 of them to step on. Waiting until the group was sitting firmly, it accelerated and dashed away. The strong wind whipped his face, making him pale. Jinu quickly covered his mouth in agony. The precautions are really strict, but I'm so dizzy. Whoever persists until the end wins. Meanwhile, the monsters had launched their attack first, a barrage of ice balls. Golem Titan flexibly dodged them. He smiled smugly, thinking Golem Titan is truly an impeccable sandbag for tank. However, another thought suddenly occurred to him. But that's not all. It stared for a moment and then jumped up. Watching Golem Titan easily cling to the high cliff, he couldn't help but express his awe. Thanks to taking the shortcuts that only the Golem can traverse, I saved a ton of time. Then Jinu turned to give a signal. Pokryong, prepare to fight. Pokryong didn't reply, only looking up. The hand it was using to grip the cliff wall suddenly tightened. Golem Titan launched itself into the air. Following that, a red warning screen appeared. Boss. Warning. Warning. Boss has appeared. Seeing them, the monster roared viciously. Seeing the tense situation, he quickly summoned the Horn Fairy. The Horn Fairy quickly flew over its head to cast magic. Jinna watched and ordered Pokryong, strike now. Immediately, flames were summoned. The fire dragon lunged and closed in on the boss in a blink. The roar faded, and the monster was engulfed in a sea of fire. The system screen quickly popped up. Boss defeated. Dungeon clear successful. Time: 4 minutes 22 seconds. He couldn't contain his joy and shouted, "Amazing!" After the battle, the group stood to rest. Jinna hummed happily. Another new record set. He abruptly froze, his face turning pale before the group's horrified eyes. Jinu collapsed and cried out, "Carsick! No, wait, I lost the golem." And on the newspaper, the headline was clear. New nation record set. Low-grade web dungeon new record of 4 minutes 22 seconds. Who is Jinu? From that moment on, everyone was skeptical when reading the article. Jinu, the girl asked with some doubt. Isn't this the person who cleared the 3rd dungeon earlier? Now the press only kept mentioning one single question. 20 News. Who is Jinu? In the cafe, whispers echoed. Who is Jinu anyway? Don't you remember? It's the guy who bluffingly claimed he would break Kong Jian-ho's record on the forum. Remembered now. In another place, similar questions were happening. So, he just set a new record again? Right. He even surpassed Kong Jian-ho. Glancing at the screen, He uttered a skeptical sentence. Doesn't look like a top-ranked pro at all. Articles were published continuously. Daily dungeon record broken by Jinnu, a rising star. The wall of the third dungeon record officially collapsed before the name Jinnu. Jinnu again shatters the fourth dungeon, clear time. Whispers followed. Unbelievable. This has never happened before. All attention was now focused on the name Jinnu. The director muttered with a headache. If it's really Jinnu, the secretary nearby added. Sir, it's the one Judge Park Chong-suk mentioned earlier. He said he would provide intel if we gave him summons. He raised an eyebrow, questioning. Is this the person Judge Im-Hee-soo vehemently opposed? The secretary confirmed immediately. Yes, that's him. At the time, we refused to pay without prior information. The director leaned back wearily, but it seems what he said was all true. He affirmed firmly, it definitely is. He didn't answer but sighed thoughtfully. Recalling the scene, the director regretted and told himself. Thinking back, Im-Hee-soo's words sounded reasonable at the time. Recalling the scene, the director regretted and told himself. Thinking back, Im-Hee-soo's words sounded reasonable at the time. But the more he thought, the more the director felt regretful. If only I had supported Jinnu. Not only would the public praise me, but I would have also gathered a heap of votes. He shook his head and chided himself. Old Im-Hee-soo is truly senile. His judgment is terrible. I didn't expect him to personally cast away the fortune right before his eyes. Still, the director spoke. First of all, where's the secretary? The secretary answered while handling work. I'm here, sir. He quickly made a decision. Try to contact Jinnu once more. The secretary was confused and confirmed again. Yes. We're going to reach out directly? The director's eyes showed determination. That's right. At first I thought it was a scam, but it turned out to be the real deal. I must win him over to our side at any cost. The director's eyes showed determination. That's right. At first I thought it was a scam, but it turned out to be the real deal. I must win him over to our side at any cost. Going to the third dungeon would yield enhancement potions. He walked firmly through the portal. The desolate desert landscape spread out before his eyes. The fifth dungeon grants skill books. These books don't help you learn special summon skills. They don't have hidden skills that only trainers can unlock, but they still drop many decent skills, so it's worth grinding. Thanks to that, I can skip the Sunday dungeon. At the Sunday dungeon, a thank you note was provided. You've worked hard, best not to meet again. Jinnu and Ramba, exhausted, shouted in unison, great, it's time to clock out. Both the Sunday and fifth dungeons drop skill books, but the fifth one gives more. Thinking this, he smugly calculated. That's enough warm-up. Should I practice a bit more? Since there's no need to grind continuously in these places, I decided to give the team a day off on Sunday. What exactly is that easy fifth dungeon? Amidst the desolate rock landscape, the system signaled. Warning, warning, warning. The screen glowed red. Boss monster appearing. Looking at the monster before him, he couldn't help but think, this is where you have to jump into a death match with the boss immediately. Jinnu complained dejectedly. The boss here has absurdly high defensive stats. The basic strategy usually used is to use the B-rank White Wolf to trigger the defense reduction skill. However, he didn't follow the beaten path and quickly summoned everyone. A giant hand slammed into the ground, followed by a heavy stomp. Seeing the majestic golem titan, Jinnu's confidence increased immediately. If you're strong enough to overwhelm it with damage, that's fine too. He raised his hand and turned off the camera. This video probably can't be sold. Jinnu sighed. If you just bring a lineup full of monsters and punch them, what can people learn? Today's menu, stir-fried earth golem. He introduced cheerfully. First, everyone, bring out your summons. Take it easy, like taking caviar out of the fridge. Everyone has a frog in their pocket, right? The audience, upon hearing this, expressed dissatisfaction. Just shut down the shop already. Jinnu sighed. If you just bring a lineup full of monsters and punch them, what can people learn? Today's menu, stir-fried earth golem. He introduced cheerfully. First, everyone, bring out your summons. Take it easy, like taking caviar out of the fridge. Everyone has a frog in their pocket, right? The audience, upon hearing this, expressed dissatisfaction. Just shut down the shop already. Finally, he concluded, anyway, it's not like there aren't tips for breaking records. Thinking this, Jinu climbed onto its hand and said, "Golem tight." Finally, he concluded, "Anyway, it's not like there aren't tips for breaking records." Thinking this, Jinu climbed onto its hand and said, "Golem tighten." Following Jinu's line of thought, the two golems clashed. That was exactly why he had to call out the golem tight. Following Jinu's line of thought, the two golems clashed. That was exactly why he had to call out the golem tight. Pokryong. Hungyo. Jinu commanded directly, "Focus all your fire on its head." In an instant, the two golems lunged at each other to do battle. But the next second, its arm was suddenly severed. Before anyone knew it, Hungyo had landed on the earth golem's arm. He calmly sheathed his sword while it stared at him, stunned. Before the earth golem could even react, it had been sliced into pieces. Up in the air, Pokryong also raised her staff to summon holy fire. She coldly prepared to deliver the finishing blow. The flames transformed into a dragon and swooped down. The raging fire instantly swallowed the earth golem. In the end, only its scorched body remained. Ending the battle, Pokryong landed on the golem titan's shoulder. Following this, a series of notifications appeared. Boss monster defeated. Dungeon clear successful. Dungeon clear successful. Jinu clenched his fist excitedly and shouted, "I cut a whole minute off the national record." Then, he looked down at Hungyo and exclaimed, "Hungyo is truly so strong he breaks the game's balance." Even so, Jinu decided to leave him out. "Despite that, I don't plan to bring him and the main team to this 5th dungeon." He pondered while observing his surroundings. Having just Pokryong, who was well-trained, was enough. Seeing Pokryong looking at him with sparkling eyes, Jinu thought proudly, "She's strong enough to clear the highest-level dungeon in a heartbeat." Seeing Pokryong looking at him with sparkling eyes, Jinu thought proudly, "She's strong enough to clear the highest-level dungeon in a heartbeat." Hungyo nodded slightly at the sound, while Ramba happily waved hello. Amidst the rocky ruins, his voice filled with relief rang out, "All right, let's go another round." A while later, Jinu stepped through the portal once again. Right at that moment, someone approached him and asked, "Excuse me, are you the player Jinu?" Looking at the two strange men, he replied cautiously, "That's me." One of them respectfully handed over a business card and introduced himself. "We are for the Secretariat of the Director's Office." Upon seeing the card, Jinu spoke up, "I understand." He didn't want to drag this out, so he asked, "What do you need me for?" Deep down, he kept wondering, "I thought the discussions with headquarters ended a long time ago." The secretary quickly explained, "We have carefully reviewed the proposal that Jinu submitted last time." His monotonous voice continued, "Seeing that you have achieved such impressive results, we are interested in collaborating." Jinu immediately interrupted, "That matter?" He waved his hand dismissively with a smile. "Let's just drop it." The two stared at him in complete shock. "Excuse me?" Seeing their expression, Jinu laughed mockingly. "Reviewing and results, my foot." In his head, the image of Ji-Ah with angel wings appeared. "I'll pay you 13 billion directly. Trust me." Behind her was the director with the words, "Let me reconsider. Just trust headquarters." The more Jinu thought about it, the angrier he got. What kind of person did they take him for? Did they think he was a pushover? They talked a good game, but in reality, they were the exact opposite of Ji-Ah. Thinking this, he spoke up, startling the secretary. Furthermore, Jinu explained calmly, "I already have a management company. If you want to talk business, just contact Ji-Ah from UBEC directly." Having said that, he walked away decisively, "That's all. Goodbye." He left the secretary wide-eyed. "UBEC?" he asked suspiciously. "What is UBEC?" The secretary expressed his confusion. "He just mentioned it. Don't tell me he's part of the Daesung group." He frowned and ordered, "Investigate this immediately." He couldn't help but feel uneasy. He didn't know why, but he felt like they had just lost a golden opportunity. On the message screen with Jinu, the chief asked anxiously, "Are you awake yet? You must be sound asleep. I suddenly missed you so much. If only I had met you sooner, it would have been great. I've fallen for you, Jinu." He just coldly sent back a like emoji followed by a notification. Jinu has left the chat group. The next day, in the city center, Jinu stood comfortably sunbathing on a rooftop. He suddenly turned around and muttered, "By this point, it should be fine." The next day, in the city center, Jinu stood comfortably sunbathing on a rooftop. Unlike other dungeons where summons do the fighting, "Master, you're such a newbie. Wait for me. Here, the player must overcome the challenges themselves to be considered clear. Jinwoo didn't hesitate to make a decision. I have to start practicing immediately. Thinking this, he quickly selected Summon. In an instant, the surrounding space shifted and the system screen appeared, summoning B-rank Sky Dragon. Jinwoo slowly walked to the railing and looked down. Seeing that height, he couldn't help but think, thanks to the protective shield, I don't have to worry about falling to my death, but it's still pretty nerve-wracking. Then Jinwoo suddenly spoke up, Sky. Sky quickly lowered itself. He climbed on and asked, "Let's go, are you ready?" On Jinwoo's command, it quickly took flight, straight to the East Sea. The sudden loss of gravity made him panic and shut his eyes tightly. But very quickly, Jinwoo opened his eyes. Looking down at the miniature city before him, he gasped in surprise. This is much more interesting than I thought. Thinking this, he happily ordered, "Great. Let's go." A while later, by the coast, seeing Hongyo, he exclaimed, "My master!" He suddenly shouted proudly, "Your flying ability is top-notch. You truly didn't disappoint me." Jinwoo thought, a bit flustered, the praise is putting me under pressure. But out loud, he quickly declined, "It's not that excellent." But Hongyo loudly disagreed. "No, I'm being serious." At this moment, Pokryong spoke up softly, "But it's the truth," she recalled with admiration. "At first, even we struggled quite a bit to ride the flying dragon." The images of their struggle flashed through his mind, showing the hardships of the main summons. He was speechless, remembering the Summoner War, when Hongyo and Pokryong had also ridden dragons and dolphins. Pokryong didn't hesitate to heap on the praise. "Truly, Saint Jinwoo, you're completely worthy of being our master." "So cool." Seeing that, Jinwoo's heart melted. "So cute." All right. Thank you, everyone." Meanwhile, Hongyo muttered gloomily to the side. "Why don't you praise me too? That's discrimination." He quickly turned his face away. "Just let it go." Observing the vast sea before him, Jinwoo asked softly, "Next is practicing riding the sky dolphin, right?" She quickly answered, "That's right." He showed humility. "Learning from experienced people like you is the fastest way to progress. I'm counting on you guys." Pokryong continued excitedly, "I will try my best." He also clenched his fist and replied, "As you command, master." A few days later, at the 6th dungeon. By now, Jinwoo had teleported to the 6th dungeon. A confident smile bloomed on the corner of his lips. This is the place that specializes in providing special runes. Jinwoo warmed up while calling out, "Wind Fairy." The virtual screen displayed the text. "The running challenge will start in 10 seconds. Reach the finish line as fast as possible." This is the place that helped me earn the Speed God title. As soon as the Wind Fairy appeared, it heard his order, "Buff me with a speed boost." Jinwoo lowered his center of gravity, preparing to run. At the same time, the countdown appeared. 3, 2, 1. As soon as the countdown hit 1, a flash of light appeared in Jinwoo's eyes. The signal was given, and he quickly bolted forward. Up in the air, gun barrels were revealed, pointing downward. He sprinted while flexibly dodging the hail of bullets. In a split second, a bullet grazed Jinwoo's arm. He nimbly leaped up, landing on the yellow squares. Actually experiencing it myself is so satisfying. It's much more fun than just looking through a computer screen. A flash of excitement appeared in Jinwoo's eyes. Time to enter the first secret path. Before his eyes was the blinding light on the horizon of the vast sea. Jinwoo smirked and calculated. Normally, you have to cross the water and just run straight. But as soon as he thought that, he suddenly leaped into the air. Jinwoo threw himself straight into the sea. He smiled radiantly and shouted loudly, "Sky Dolphin, come out!" A dolphin leaped out from under the sea. Summoned Surank Sky Dolphin. Jinwoo hugged it and nimbly closed his eyes tightly, holding his breath. The next second, both had vanished into the deep sea. Admiring the brilliant scenery under the sea, he couldn't help but think, if I use the dolphin to move underwater, I can dodge a bunch of obstacles up there. Jinwoo squinted slightly as they prepared to surface. As soon as he shot out of the sea, he immediately shouted, "Sky Dragon!" Seeing the familiar figure, Jinwoo quickly climbed down. From this point on, he put his force into leaping off the dolphin's body. Jinwoo easily landed on Sky's back. It will be an aerial performance. The two flexibly dodged all attacks. Just flying past the remaining traps is enough. In the blink of an eye, the destination appeared. He opened his eyes wide with excitement and shouted, "Finish!" Following Jinu's joyful shout, the system screen popped up immediately. "You have reached the finish line." The system happily congratulated him. Dungeon completed. Time, 2 minutes 16 seconds, followed by a screen of fireworks in the sky. Congratulations on breaking South Korea's national record. You have achieved a special achievement. The forest blazed fiercely under a crimson sky. The scene shifted to the 7th dungeon after the 6th had been cleared. A massive monster roared amidst the intense flames, while burning creatures scattered in panic. A falcon dove straight down. Fire engulfed the forest as all the monsters were wiped out. The dungeon was cleared in just 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The view showed towering cliffs under the sunset, as the Sunday dungeon was also quickly cleared. Jinwoo stood with his arms spread wide, his summoned creatures unleashing power onto the enemies. A beam of light struck the target directly. A white-haired figure with glowing eyes was bleeding from the face, his head jerking back from the impact. Hungyo stood holding a glowing blue sword, while the others stood behind him. The ultimate leader was defeated, and the dungeon was cleared. Hungyo closed his eyes calmly, with Ramba sitting on his head. He said, "This battle was really tough," while she said, "This is the result of our training." Jinwoo helped Pokryong stand up. She added, "Everyone did a great job." He wiped sweat from his forehead, let out a sigh, and broke the South Korean national record for clearing all low-level dungeons. A clear time of 14 minutes and 50 seconds was displayed as he said, "Now, if I keep grinding them, the clear times will only get shorter. Let's focus on building up our strength until we can challenge the mid-level dungeons." He looked up at the colossal tower soaring into the sky and said, "I need to clear up to the highest level dungeons, collecting runes and skills up to a certain point. Only then will I have enough stats to challenge the trial tower." He glanced to the side with a slight smile as the others stood nearby, then said, "Are 2 years enough?" Hungyo grabbed Ramba by the hand. Jinwoo looked at the system board and said, "By the way," a menu full of items appeared. He continued, "High-grade summon scrolls are one thing, but what should I do with these clear rewards?" The scene shifted to Yu Baek's office, where Ji-ah was sitting at her desk, holding her phone. The phone screen displayed news about Jinwoo breaking records in the daily dungeons. The news report questioned who he really was and declared that the whole world was going crazy over Baek Jinwoo. She leaned back in her chair with a calm smile and said, She remarked that this was to be expected since he had broken every dungeon record in just 1 week. She turned her head toward Byung Jin and called out to him. He was sitting at his desk and replied, "Yes, ma'am." She asked how the video editing was coming along. Byung Jin scratched his head nervously and said he had just finished it. Byung Jin looked up from behind his computer screen and asked if there was a problem. TCOP looked up from behind his computer screen and asked if there was a problem. Ji-ah sat at her desk, holding a device, and said, "It's not a problem, but it's hard to believe even while doing it. Do you guys want to see?" She looked at the screen, playing an underwater scene, and said she didn't include the Thursday and Sunday dungeons in the video, as requested by Baek Jinwoo. She and the 2 men stared intently at the screen with serious expressions. One person reacted in shock. The camera zoomed in on a hand gripping a dolphin underwater, while a voice echoed, "What the hell is that?" A blinding light spread across the sea, and the water rippled outward under the glare. A giant wyvern flew up with Jinwoo riding on its back. The voice continued, "That's absurd." Ji-ah sat stunned while Bong Jin said, "His strategy and execution are on an entirely different level. It's practically like a circus act." She asked, "Is this for real?" Byung Jin said with a strange expression, "Not even a movie could shoot a scene like this." He added that even if they sold it, people would just get cursed at because no one else could replicate. Ji-ah looked straight ahead with calm eyes as a voice spoke. "That just proves how good Baek Jinwoo is." She gripped the armrests of her chair and said, "Before we sell these videos," Byung Jin stood behind her. She continued, "Let's buy up all the summoned creatures that appear in them." He said she was thinking about cornering the market first. Ji-ah turned slightly with a confident smile and said, "That's right, because we need to maximize our profits based on this information." Byung Jin leaned forward typed on his tablet with a surprised look and said, "So with the current budget, we will try to—" I interrupted. "No, don't worry about the budget. Just buy them all." I turned back with a confident smile and signaled, "If it's not enough, I'll take out a loan under my name." Her hands typed on the keyboard extremely fast. She sat at her desk with a composed smile while continuing to type. In a stylized scene, a character with a dollar sign stood at the table opposite while a voice shouted, "You get the branch manager in here." In the same stylized scene, two characters in suits knelt beside a pile of money and said, "We've approved it to the maximum limit. I can even give you my watch." The other person said, "You just tell me whatever you need," while she smiled, closed her eyes, and said, "I've borrowed the money and bought all the summoned creatures." She typed on the keyboard and declared, "Now is the time to sell the information." Prices and conditions for dungeon strategy information were displayed. A screen full of strategy information for all daily dungeons was being sold, including Baek Jin-woo's. Byung Jin leaned toward the screen and asked, "Is it okay to sell it for such a low price?" Sat calmly and replied that the strategy information was just bait to sell the summoned creatures. She turned her head slightly with a faint smile and said, "This is also for the development of Korea, so selling it a bit cheap is fine." Top turned toward them from his desk and asked at what price they should list the stockpiled summoned creatures. She smiled confidently and said, "Keep C rank at 200 million and B rank at 1 billion. TCOP turned back with a shocked look and said, "That's 10 times the current market price. Isn't that too expensive?" Many glowing summoned creatures floated in the dark space. A voice spoke, "Because this information is spreading, these summoned creatures will eventually be what everyone needs, so the price will naturally go up." More summoned creatures appeared as the voice continued. "Since they hold most of the supply, everyone will have no choice but to buy." The cursor clicked the post button. The voice spoke, "Now, then," and it was time to reap the rewards of trusting and investing in Baek Jin-woo. The sky brightened with a building appearing. A voice called, "Ma'am." The two men leaned forward with surprised expressions, looking at the screen, and said, "This isn't a dream, is it?" While sat below, smiling. The screen displayed sales revenue reaching 377 billion. A burst of blinding light exploded from the screen, causing the two men to cover their faces. A voice spoke, "We haven't even started yet. What the hell is this?" Jia's hands trembled on the keyboard while the two men behind her cheered. The voice continued, "The summoned creatures bought for Baek Jin-woo only cost 1.3 billion, and now it's turned into this." Jia sat with her eyes closed, taking a deep breath to calm her excitement, while the two men slumped against the wall behind her. She sat at her desk, facing the screen, and said, "The business viability has been proven." The two men looked at her in shock while she added, "Now we start large-scale investments." One replied, "Huh." She turned her head with a confident smile and said, "First, shall we go buy a building?" She looked back at the two men kneeling on the floor and asked, "Why are they so pathetic?" They remained seated on the floor and replied, "Because of Baek Jin-woo and the glasses." Jin-woo sat alone on a park bench, holding his phone. The phone screen displayed Baek Jin-woo's account balance of over 54 million. He smiled, looking at the phone with sparkling lights all around, while Ramba clung to his shoulder with a shocked expression. He said, "In just 1 week of selling high-grade summon scrolls, I've earned 54 million. She asked, "How many cakes is that?" He leaned back on the bench with a happy smile and said, "Dungeon rewards are so sweet." While Ramba pointed at herself and asked, "Did any EX rank ones come out of that pile?" Jin-woo looked straight ahead with a serious expression and said, "Ramba, have you forgotten?" He lay flat on the ground, surrounded by piles of summoned creatures and debris, while groaning. Many memories flashed of him and Ramba tearing open summoned scrolls. He leaned against the bench and said they had torn open tens of thousands of scrolls, yet nothing came out. Jin-woo sat holding his phone while Ramba cried out, "Just thinking about it is ghostly painful." He added, "Moreover, right now, instead of opening new summon scrolls, it's time to focus on upgrading the summon creatures I already have." He looked down at his phone and said, "By the way, I should also sell all the junk I got from grinding. Should I ask Jia?" He held up his phone. The screen displayed Beck Ah-jin's contact information. Ah-jin stood in the middle of a crowd while he considered and thought. Come to think of it, Ah-jin sells runes. From now on, there will constantly be stuff worth selling. I might as well hand it all over to Ah-jin. His fingers tapped quickly on the phone keyboard. Ah-jin handed money to her mother under the streetlights, while thinking he could share the profits with her. Furthermore, she was helping pay part of his medical bills. She smiled brightly while holding the stack of cash in her hands. He typed on his phone and sent. Hey Ah-jin, can we meet for a bit? He looked at the phone and sent next. If you can, come to the vacant lot. He smiled slightly while thinking now was the perfect time to repay her. The scene shifted to a cafe where a girl was standing near the entrance. A blonde girl covered her mouth and laughed, asking if her new boyfriend was a player, while the other girl replied and asked about his summoned creatures. Did he have any beerinks? A girl raised her glass to drink and said she didn't know, but he told her he would have some soon. Another voice chimed in. Maybe later he'll gift her a summon or a rune, and that they were jealous. Ah-jin lowered her eyes, closed them, and let out a soft sigh. She slightly raised both hands while speaking with a forced smile. The girl beside her looked at her and asked what was wrong, noting she didn't look well. Ah-jin replied that she was just distracted. Ah-jin looked at her friend with a small smile. A voice told her to share her troubles. Speaking about it might make her feel better. She closed her eyes, her face slightly flushed, and said, Guys, I'm really touched, but my brother is the player everyone has been talking about lately. Jin-woo stood with his back to a high-rise building, money flying around him while he said to keep this a secret for now. Ah-jin stared in astonishment and muttered, What? She gripped the edge of the table with a tense expression, sweat breaking out. Her friend smiled while Ah-jin thought about how to tell them that he had even set up a company to sell information. She grabbed her hair with both hands and shook her head in frustration, thinking he must have his reasons. Even so, Ah-jin still stood awkwardly between the two. They looked at her worriedly and asked what her brother had been doing lately. Was he busy? She stuttered that she didn't know anything. She pulled her hair hard with an angry expression, flames rising behind her while she thought it was really annoying to have to hide it from her parents. But she couldn't just blurt it out either. Ah-jin imagined herself screaming and struggling wildly while she sat at the table, looking down at her phone with a confused expression. She looked at the screen, showing the message about meeting at the vacant lot. She stared at her phone with wide eyes, while thinking she wondered what else he was about to say. She stood up from her chair and said she had to go first. Her friends looked at her in surprise. Ah-jin turned back toward them and clasped her hands. Her friends said, We were planning to have dinner together. She apologized and said, My brother called. The girl leaned forward with a surprised expression and asked if her brother had just woken up from a coma. Was he okay now? Ah-jin raised her hand while walking out and said she would tell them in detail later. She would pay for the next outing. An empty outdoor area with cliffs under the daylight. Ah-jin stood holding her bag, looking forward, and asked what was going on. A wildcat shot a burst of energy toward the red monsters, flames erupting among them. Two figures ran at high speed toward the front, with a wyvern flying above. Many fairies fluttered around the golem while it tried to catch them. Hungyo stood biting a whistle and observed calmly. Ah-jin realized he was the one who had overwhelmed her shadow elf last time. He turned his head toward Ah-jin while she stood frozen in place. Ah-jin looked at him with a blank expression while he turned his face away and ignored her. She asked, Is he here? She turned her head with a surprised expression and called for her brother, asking what all this was. He stood shirtless, a towel draped over his shoulders, wiping his head. A rear view showed his muscular physique. Ah-jin looked with a confused expression and asked what this was, while wondering if his body was always like this. A version of him, thin and sickly, holding a phone with trembling hands, appeared in her thoughts. He only laid there getting 4 drips in a hospital bed. He couldn't even lift anything heavier than a phone. Jin-woo held the towel around his neck, turned back to look at her, and asked, Are you okay? Ah-jin leaned forward with a shocked expression, pointed at the crowd of summoned creatures behind him, and shouted, Brother, what are those summons? He asked what's wrong. She said their market price had skyrocketed recently. The summons and their values were displayed. C-rank Combat Sheriff and Priest of Radiance at 200 million, B-rank Sky Wyvern, Wind Falcon, and Titanium Golem at 1 billion. She said they were hard to find because there was no supply. Ajin squinted with a tense expression and thought, wait, why does he have such rare ones? Jin Woo stood in front of a high-rise building while she thought rumors said these summons appeared in videos sold by Yubek. He turned his head slightly with a faint smirk. She said, Yubek. Ajin's eyes widened sharply, and she reacted in surprise. She looked at him with a shocked expression and said, no way. Jin Woo stood with his arms crossed, looking at her. She asked, brother, did you break the daily dungeon records using these summons? He replied, yeah. She asked, where did you get them? He answered, do you remember Jia from back then? Ajin clasped her hands excitedly and replied, Jia, of course I remember. While Jia appeared behind her, covering her mouth and laughing, asking, you're Jin Woo's little sister, right? You're so cute. She remained with her hands clasped, looking straight ahead with a blank expression when he said, she gave them to me. Ajin's face broke into a sweat, and she shouted, she gave you such expensive things. While Jin Woo stood in the distance, she asked, don't they belong to the company? He replied, no. She stood stiff with a dazed expression while Jin Woo faced her and said, anyway, you came quickly. Ajin held her fist near her mouth, looked at him with a surprised expression, and asked, that's right. Why did you call me here? He asked, are you still selling runes these days? A hand spread out over a glowing blue interface full of rune icons. She replied, yeah, I sold a few yesterday too. And asked, why do you ask? He replied, well, it's like this. Jin Woo waved his hand forward over the glowing interface. Items scattered to the ground while Ajin startled and widened her eyes. A large pile of dungeon rewards appeared between the two. Both looked at it. She shouted, what is this? He replied that these were rewards he received from clearing the dungeons, and asked if she wanted to see. Ajin picked up a rune, held it close to her face to examine it, and said this was a swiftness rune, right, but the stats were slightly. A small chibi version of her appeared and reacted. Oh, this cleave rune has a rare critical strike probability. This will sell for a high price. While Jin Woo stood with his arms crossed and smiled. She squinted one eye, held the blue rune, and said, this one has crit rate on defense stats, so it's a bit weird. But she thought, the stats aren't bad though. Jin Woo thought it was because Ajin sold runes every day. Ajin stood facing a large holographic market board full of charts and labels. He added that she had a very keen eye, even remembering all the low drop rate rune effects. She could also quickly judge the value of skill books and materials. She sat on the ground, waving her hand tiredly beside a summoned creature under a sign that read, sleep less to save the family. He said she could even recognize his summons immediately. She must live in the market. She held the book with both hands and looked up in surprise when he called her name. Jin Woo faced her with a slight smile while she hugged the book to her chest. He said, I'll hand it all over to you. Do you want to try selling it? She replied, you want me to sell it? She looked to the side with a blank expression while thinking, I'm confident I can sell it well. Ajin smiled, closed her eyes, and stood in front of a shop while thinking at least she wasn't inferior to anyone. And she had shown her business aptitude many times. A smaller version of her held a phone out to Jin Woo as he turned back. Her thoughts continued. Ever since she was little, no matter what game she played, she always found trading more fun than hunting monsters. Books and colorful stones lay scattered on the ground as she thought. But if she sold these, farming for runes would no longer be necessary. Ajin leaned forward with a determined expression and said, wait, but is it better to just focus on selling? She added, the thing I'm most worried about is... Jin Woo looked straight ahead with a neutral expression. Ajin looked at him with a slightly worried expression and asked, so what's my commission? She lowered her eyes with a serious expression while thinking, I have to think about my own future, too. Doing it for free once or twice is fine, but it can't be every time. Jin Woo crossed his arms, smiled calmly, and asked, how much do you want? Ajin stood with her eyes closed and said, usually big wholesalers take about 8 to 10%, but since it's you... She raised her hand with her fingers spread. She held up her hand, signaled with 5 fingers, and said, I'll only take 5%, okay? Jin Woo closed his eyes with a small smile and said, what do you mean, 5%? He added, between us. Ajin looked down, a drop of sweat running down her cheek, and she reacted silently. A hand was raised with 2 fingers. Then she stood looking forward with a confused expression. Jin Woo stood with a radiant smile, held up 2 fingers, and said, "I'll be generous and give you 20%. Try to sell it well." Jin stood frozen, her eyes wide and mouth agape, stuttering, 20%. Jin Woo stood behind her, closed his eyes and smiled, and repeated, "Between us, Jin." She reached forward in astonishment and shouted, "You're giving me that much?" He turned his back, waved his hand as he walked away, and said, "Later on, I'll give you more good runes. Get ready to be busy." Jin stood behind him, sweating, and reacted, "Later on?" Meaning it wasn't just once, but long-term. Jin leaned forward with a flushed and shocked expression while thinking, selling all that stuff with a 20% commission. She squeezed both hands in front of her chest. She stood still, looking down at his departing back, and said, "Now, there's no need to farm runes anymore." Jin Woo walked away with a faint smile while she wiped her eyes with her sleeves behind him. Jin smiled brightly, eyes welling up with tears, and said, "I'm going to become a professional merchant." A fierce fire swirled, with Pokryong at the center, while Jin Woo stood inside the protective barrier. After handing all the dungeon rewards to Jin, he focused on leveling up Pokryong. A staff with a glowing core was held out in front as energy gathered around it. A massive dragon-shaped wave of fire tore through the battlefield while she cast explosive dragon wave. Jin Woo stood calmly inside the barrier with a faint smile. Pokryong gripped the staff tightly with a focused expression as the narration stated that the essential requirement to become a strong player was to have a powerful damage dealer. She took a step forward while holding the staff. Jin Woo said, "Well done, Pokryong." He reached out and patted her head. She startled slightly. He continued, "By now, you could clear a D-rank dungeon with your eyes closed." "That's amazing." She smiled slightly with flushed cheeks and said, "Thank you." Jin Woo touched his chin and thought it had been quite a while since he started running dungeons with only Pokryong. Ramba reached forward in a panic with tears as he said, "Hungyo must be training the others." He waved his hand as he walked. Ramba was pinned under a large pot, while other summoned creatures stood nearby. The narration said that summoned creatures could wander for several hours without a player and could even self-unsummon. They walked side by side through a dimly lit cave while he said, "Come to think of it, Pokryong." She replied, "Yes, Lord Jin Woo." He and she walked deeper into the cave while he asked, "Is there anything else you want?" As a goblin was watching them from behind a rock, the goblin leaped forward with its mouth wide open and weapons raised to attack. Her eyes widened sharply as she reacted to the incoming attack. Pokryong turned, swung her staff, and a trail of fire burned along the ground, striking the goblin. They continued walking side by side. She looked up and said, "The thing I want," he replied. "Yeah, like Hungyo or Ramba." Hungyo lifted weights with an expressionless face while Ramba hugged a piece of bread happily. Jin Woo held up one finger with a smile and gestured toward them while he spoke. Pokryong hugged her staff tightly and hesitated. Jin Woo said, "Just speak freely, anything at all." She closed her eyes with a gentle smile and said, "I am already very satisfied being able to help Lord Jin Woo like this." He placed his hand on his chest with a touched expression. He patted her head continuously while laughing and said, "Come on, tell me at least one thing, for example, something you want to eat." He leaned slightly forward with a calm smile and said that usually summoned creatures didn't need to eat. Pokryong sat at the table with everyone else when he said he had often eaten with regular people. She bit into a piece of pizza beside Hungyo while he said that seeing Ramba so obsessed with cake meant they had a sense of taste. Jin Woo held a piece of pizza in his hand and said he couldn't leave them alone while selfishly eating something good by himself. Pokryong stood facing Jin Woo in the cave. He looked at her and wondered, out of all the things she had eaten, which one was the most delicious. A piece of strawberry cake appeared, and he said she was a bit shy, so she probably liked desserts. Jin Woo smiled while she said there was one thing. He looked at her and asked what it was. A plate of fried chicken and a glass of beer appeared while she held her staff and reacted in surprise, saying, "Fried chicken." He stood facing forward and said, "That's right. So, Pokryong, what skill are you planning to learn next?" The stages of explosive dragon secret arts were displayed. Yun, transform flame, destroy. She pointed with her staff and said, Dragon Mage, Secret Arts Yun. She gripped the staff with both hands and smiled brightly when Jin Woo said, then on the day you master that skill, we'll take a day off from special training. She closed her eyes with an excited smile as Jin Woo faced her and said, yeah, that day we'll throw a chicken party for the whole group. She replied, I'd love that. I'll try hard so I can rest. Two versions of her stood side by side for comparison. Less chicken, more rest. While Jin Woo watched with a sweat drop, thinking she was even more excited about resting than the chicken. The cave was empty with rays of light shining in. Jin Woo said, well, that's fine. The important thing is having the motivation to try hard at everything. The scene shifted to 3 people standing on the ground, looking toward an excavator and buildings. One said, oh, Ah stood with her arms crossed between 2 men. Byung Jin asked her how she even found a place like this, ma'am. She replied that she bought it from her grandfather and would build the UBEC building right here. She pointed toward the construction site and said this part would be the office, and over there would be the dorms and apartments exclusively for staff. She stood with her back turned beside Byung Jin and said she would build an underground bunker beneath all the buildings. He looked at her and asked, underground bunker? She replied, that's right. She recalled Jin Woo saying all he needed to worry about was protecting his family well. She thought she had to keep her promise at all costs. Ah stood with one hand on her hip, her hair blowing in the wind. The vacant lot stretched out under the sky. She thought because he liked wide-open spaces, putting the training field over there would be perfect. Byung Jin turned his head slightly when she asked, have you managed to get the summon I mentioned, Byung Jin? He replied, yes, I have. A glowing wolf appeared amidst blue energy as it stepped forward. This is the shadow wolf, as you requested. Byung Jin stood next to the sitting wolf and asked, why this specific summon? While the other 2 stood facing him, Ah crossed her arms and smiled, saying she had someone to give it to. The scene shifted to a number of people sitting at a table in a restaurant. Meat sizzled on the grill, smoke rising while someone called out, Jin. Jin smiled as 2 girls reacted excitedly to the food, saying it was so delicious and asking if they were really being treated at such a fancy place. Jin replied, of course, just order whatever you like. She held her chopsticks and smiled gently when her friend said that being a top player really makes a difference. Her eyes were shown in a close-up when she said, it's all thanks to my brother. Many glowing items floated in the space, including books, armor, and potions. As the narrator described, the amount of items her brother gave her was vast, and many pieces had excellent options. The crowd reached out with cards toward her while shouting, the items here are the best, and asking to be contacted in advance. If good runes dropped, as the narration went, thanks to him, her customer base grew rapidly. A hand holding chopsticks stopped in midair when someone asked, hey, do you guys know Baek Jinwoo? The blonde girl smiled and replied, yeah, he's really famous lately. He even broke his own record again. Jin stiffened with anxiety. Jin smiled and closed her eyes while holding her chopsticks, thinking her brother really was talented, while everyone else kept talking. At this rate, is he planning to challenge the world record? It's truly amazing. Jin kept her eyes closed with a blank expression while listening. He's also really handsome, isn't he? 2 girls leaned forward excitedly, smiling and saying he definitely must have a girlfriend, right? They were so jealous of his girlfriend. Jin froze, her eyes widening and trembling as she thought, handsome my foot. Is there some other Baek Jinwoo I don't know about? A girl gestured while asking if Baek Jinwoo had an Instagram. Another said he was at Jia's company. So, he must be on her follow list, right? Meanwhile, Jin bowed her head, sweating, chewing her food and saying, yeah, whatever you say. One girl's eyes widened in surprise. A phone screen was held up, displaying a list of accounts. Someone said, this one right here. 2 girls leaned over the phone with shocked expressions, pointing and saying, Jin, isn't this your account? Why is following you? Jin faced them, sweating, and said, what? Jin gripped her phone with both hands, looking tense, and said they must have misread it. The phone was held up, displaying Jia's profile with the status following, and they said they were really following each other. Jin looked down at her phone with wide eyes and said, She follows me like a fan. But since when did I follow her back? She looked straight ahead, sweat streaming down her face while thinking it must be because she's his family member. The two girls sat at the table, smiling excitedly, gripping their hands and staring at her. Jean, in the foreground, was sweating nervously and stuttering. The girls leaned aggressively across the table toward Jean while shouting, "What is this? Explain." And they asked if they knew each other. Were they close? Jean sat stiffly with a blank expression. A hand grabbed the phone, holding it upright as it vibrated violently with a shrill, buzzing sound. Jean held the phone with a tense, sweaty expression and said, "Wait a second," while the blonde girl beside her clenched her hands excitedly and said, "Tell us." She stared at the phone with a blank expression when a message from Yuji appeared. Her eyes widened dramatically as she looked at the phone. Another message from Yuji asked if she happened to be free tomorrow. She stood up from her chair, raising her hands and shouting. The other diners turned to look. A voice asked what was wrong while a staff member called out, "Excuse me, miss." A quiet street stretched out under a bright sky. A black sedan glided smoothly onto the road. Jean trembled as she clasped her hands together when a voice spoke up. "It's been a long time, hasn't it?" Ji sat behind the wheel, winked mischievously, and said, "Get in." Jean excitedly blurted out, "Yes." Jean excitedly blurted out, "Yes." The black sedan left the curb and drove along the street. Jean nervously wrung her hands and said softly, "So, that means?" Jia drove with a calm smile. Jean sat stiffly beside her in astonishment when she said, "You wanted to meet my family, right?" Jia replied, "That's right. Jean has been quite busy lately." Jia smiled gently while driving and said, "First, I asked if I could send gifts under the name of Ubek, and he said it was fine." Jean looked at her with sparkling eyes and asked, "Oh, so you're planning to give them in person?" Ji calmly replied, "Yes, because I am the CEO." Jean sat in silence with flushed cheeks, thinking that sending them by mail would normally be enough. She wondered how much Ji cared for her brother to come personally. She glanced over with unbelievable jealousy, while Ji drove with a confused smile. Jean thought that Ji coming personally made her feel truly jealous. Ji gripped the steering wheel and asked, "I'm coming without notice. Will your parents mind?" Jean smiled brightly from the passenger seat and said, "It's fine. I already told my parents to stay home today because I have someone I want to introduce." She recalled her parents constantly asking about Jean Woo, while she constantly answered that she didn't know anything, not even whether he was still alive. Jean crossed her arms, laughed proudly, and declared that Jean Woo was definitely #1 in the world when it came to being slow on the uptake. The black sedan parked next to a modest apartment building under a bright afternoon sky. The elevator display lit up with the number 5 when the doors opened. Jean opened the apartment door, gestured inside, and said, "This is my home." She stepped inside and loudly called out, "Mom, Dad, I'm home." Ji followed behind with a slightly tense expression. Ji looked around the small living room quietly and thought, "It's so small." Her gaze shifted to the kitchen area and the simple dining table. She looked around with a faint smile and remarked that this was truly a place where people live. Jin's parents stood at the door with surprised expressions. Her father asked, "Jin, you're home?" Realizing the guest her daughter had brought home, Yuji stood with an elegant smile and said, "Hello, sir and ma'am." Jin's father stared in astonishment and asked why she had such a beautiful friend. She placed her hand on her chest and politely said, "It's a pleasure to meet you." Jin's parents stood frozen with stunned expressions when Yuji introduced herself as being from Ubek. They repeated her name in disbelief. Steam rose from a cup of coffee on the table when a trembling voice asked if all of this was real. Jin's parents sat stiffly at the table, looking completely shocked as they realized Jean Woo was a famous player and the woman in front of them was the CEO of his company, and also from the Daesung group. Ji smiled calmly across the table and said, "Yes, I came to visit you in my capacity as the CEO of Ubek." Jin's parents were flustered with overwhelmed expressions, calling her a precious guest in their cramped home. Jin quietly realized that her parents had always viewed her in this light. Ji used formal language with Jin's father, which made him jump in alarm and reply nervously. With a calm expression, Ji-ah explained that under the contract, Yu-Beck had the obligation to take care of both her father and mother. Ah-Jin's parents looked blank with disbelief and repeated, "Us?" Ji-ah pushed a thick Yu-Beck document folder across the table and politely asked them to take a look. When opened, the pages clearly stated protection services, a new house, living expenses, medical care, and comprehensive support from Yu-Beck for every need. Their eyes widened in surprise as they read the benefits, until a line stood out. Living expense support of 10 million/month. Completely overwhelmed, they could barely believe the number and asked if this was real. Ji-ah smiled warmly, signaling for them to be at ease, and told them to just accept it without hesitation, while Ah-Jin sat nearby, also stunned by the scale of what Ji-ah was offering. Ji-ah calmly told Ah-Jin's parents that compared to Baek Jin-woo's achievements, this support package was actually very small. She smiled brightly, saying she had also prepared a few small gifts, which made her parents, already overwhelmed, even more flustered. A holographic storage window appeared in front of Ji-ah. She explained that Jin-woo told her that Ah-Jin's father really liked summoned creatures. A holographic storage window appeared in front of Ji-ah. She explained that Jin-woo told her that Ah-Jin's father really liked summoned creatures. A burst of blue light flared in the room as a summoned creature appeared in front of everyone. It was a diamond golem, a B-rank summon. Ji-ah explained it was about the same size as a pebble golem, but much stronger. The cute crystal golem happily posed in front of Ah-Jin's father. His eyes sparkled with excitement, emotionally thanking her and saying he never expected to receive something like this thanks to his son. Ji-ah turned to Ah-Jin's mother and said she had also prepared a gift for her. Her mother stood stunned because she was also receiving a gift. Ji-ah turned to Ah-Jin's mother and said she had also prepared a gift for her. Her mother stood stunned because she was also receiving a gift. Her mother was immediately captivated by the cute little creature, gently holding it in her hands, her face blushing with happiness. Ah-Jin looked at it all in amazement and joked that her parents were so lucky. Ah-Jin was startled when Ji-ah calmly told her that there was also a gift for her. A giant white wolf appeared, surrounded by dark green energy, its glowing eyes looking straight ahead with majesty. Ah-Jin stepped back, her hands trembling, her eyes widening in disbelief at what she was seeing. She shouted in amazement at the shadow wolf sitting in front of her. Ji-ah smiled and said Jin-woo knew she would like it. Ah-Jin burst into tears, hugging the shadow wolf tightly, and joked that she would ask for a refund later. While her parents were still stunned, wondering if they were really allowed to keep all these gifts, she excitedly promised to tell her brother to treat her parents even better. Ji-ah covered her mouth, laughing elegantly, and softly called Ah-Jin cute. Ah-Jin's mother worriedly insisted that they couldn't accept so much and suggested everyone have a meal together. Ji-ah happily agreed and said she had already thought of a restaurant. A traditional restaurant lay under a bright sky. The family sat together in the restaurant. Someone remarked that Jin-woo spent every day playing games instead of studying, but now he had been rewarded. Ah-Jin's parents smiled at each other, remembering that Jin-woo had played games for a very long time, and whenever he was into something, he would dive into it with extreme seriousness. Ah-Jin laughed while eating and said everyone was blowing her brother's accomplishments out of proportion, achieving everything in just 1 year. Ji-ah drank quietly beside her. Her eyes widened sharply when Ah-Jin's father corrected Ah-Jin. Jin-woo has actually been playing for at least 10 years. Ji-ah leaned forward in surprise, asking Ah-Jin's father if Jin-woo really had been playing for 10 years. Ah-Jin looked to the side with an expression of disbelief. Ah-Jin's father crossed his arms on the table and recalled, unsure, that Jin-woo probably started playing back in middle school. Ah-Jin's father stood silently in Jin-woo's dark room. Jin-woo had fallen asleep at his desk. He recalled sneaking a peek at the game after seeing his son fall asleep while playing. Jin-woo was still fast asleep next to his phone when his father remembered the game's name was Battle of Summoners. Jin-woo had stared intently at the device until late at night. His father worriedly stood behind him, watching, and remembered he continued playing throughout high school. Ah-Jin turned to her father in disbelief and loudly asked if all those stories were true. Ji-ah listened quietly beside them, Jin and Ji fell into a stunned silence, realizing there was only one person who could play a single game for 10 years. Both sat frozen on their chairs in the heavy atmosphere. In their minds, the thought echoed that Baek Jin-woo might just be that legendary player. A cloaked figure appeared behind Jin-woo as energy swirled around, and the name God Jin-woo flashed in the tense moment of realization. Sunlight shone on the apartment building as a peaceful morning began. Jin-woo sat cross-legged in his room, a large inventory window floating in front of him. The inventory was filled with leveled-up summon creatures like Titanium Golem, Frost Cat, Horned Fairy, Wind Falcon, and Lava Drakes. The inventory was filled with leveled-up summoned creatures like Titanium Golem, Frost Cat, Horned Fairy, Wind Falcon, and Lava Drakes. He picked up his phone and decided to contact Ji. He messaged Ji that he planned to challenge the intermediate dungeon next week and asked if he should prepare to record. Ji immediately replied that she had been waiting for this news for a long time. Jin-woo looked at the phone, surprised because the ping message disappeared immediately. Ji excitedly told Jin-woo that he just needed to put on his gear and clear the dungeon as before, because the entire marketing strategy was already prepared. A huge promotional ad appeared with a video of the dungeon clear at a discount, along with a strategy guide. Jin-woo looked blankly, wondering when she had prepared all of this. He replied briefly that it sounded great, then decided that leaving the marketing to Ji was fine. Jin happily hugged the wolf tight while telling Jin-woo how amazing it was and that Ji herself had given it to her. Ji smiled across the table when Jin-woo remembered hearing Jin say that Ji had even personally visited their house. Jin hugged the wolf tight, tears streaming down her face while her parents stood behind her in amazement. A faint smile spread across Jin-woo's face when he realized that everything was indeed much different than dealing with the government. Holding the phone in his hand, Jin-woo quietly thought that joining Baek was the right decision. 1 week later, flames and debris exploded across the battlefield when a giant enemy fell before Jin-woo and Pokryong. The system window announced the dungeon clear with a completion time of 6 minutes and 27 seconds. Jin-woo crossed his arms and smiled contentedly after having just finished another intermediate dungeon. The press and online articles were flooded with news asking who Baek Jin-woo really was. Stories about the records he broke spread everywhere, but Jin-woo said he didn't care much about those things. His face turned sharp in silence when the attention shifted to another issue. Pokryong floated beside Jin-woo, holding her staff, admitting that she still hadn't grasped the Yun skill properly. Pokryong looked straight ahead with a confused expression and asked why it kept happening like that. Jin-woo realized she had been acting strange lately. Crossing his arms under the tree, Hongyo said Pokryong seemed to be up to something. Sitting beside him with a puzzled expression, Jin-woo asked what he meant. Hongyo explained that Pokryong's mana and control should have been enough to use Yun by now. Looking straight ahead in silence, Hongyo said the fact that the skill didn't appear meant Pokryong was intentionally suppressing it. Still confused, Jin-woo asked if Pokryong really had a reason to do that. The summoned creature pointed out that recently Jin-woo had only been taking Pokryong into the dungeon. Jin-woo quietly admitted that was true. Jin-woo looked at him with a puzzled expression. Hongyo guessed that Pokryong simply liked being the center of attention. A girl hugged a small summoned creature to her chest, as Hongyo explained that all summoned creatures instinctively craved attention from the player. Looking at Jin-woo from afar, Pokryong feared that if she progressed too quickly, their relationship might change. Clutching her lapels in front of her chest, Pokryong quietly worried that after this, she wouldn't be able to go into the dungeon alone with Jin-woo anymore. Jin-woo looked straight ahead in silence, letting out a thoughtful groan. Smiling awkwardly beside Hongyo, Jin-woo admitted this situation was quite confusing but also strangely moving. As leaves flew in the wind, Jin-woo asked what they should do next. Hongyo suggested changing the training method, pointing forward with a confident smile. Hongyo said he had a good idea. Under the orange sunset sky, someone suddenly called Jin-woo's name, causing him and Hongyo to look over in surprise. Smiling radiantly, Pokryong finally learned the Yun skill, reached level 42, and unlocked explosive dragon secret arts, Yun, allowing her to accumulate explosive dragon weight. Looking ahead in astonishment, Jin Woo admitted that at first he was skeptical, but Hongyo's plan had actually worked. In the chibi-style explanation, Hongyo told Jin Woo to stop taking Pokryong into the dungeon until she learned Yun. Meanwhile, Jin Woo shyly wondered if that method was really effective. Jin Woo smiled faintly and admitted that regardless, Hongyo's perception was indeed unique. With the fairy sitting on his head, Jin Woo hummed softly. Jin Woo patted Pokryong's head and praised her effort. She happily thanked him. Looking down at Pokryong with a gentle smile, Jin Woo admitted he might have scolded her for acting up. Pokryong smiled radiantly when he realized that what the summoned creature wanted was like a mission, so fulfilling it wouldn't hurt. He chuckled to himself. Jin Woo said Pokryong just wanted to be with him more, so he couldn't stay mad for long. He then pulled out a black card and said, "All right." Holding the black card up high with a smile, Jin Woo declared that since Pokryong had succeeded, today they would take a break from training to throw a chicken party. Grabbing the card happily, Jin Woo thanked Ms. Ji after she explained that the card could be used for living expenses and had a limit of 1 billion per year. Jin Woo suddenly froze when the phrase "break from training" echoed in his head. Hongyo looked straight ahead with a look of complete shock as the phrase "rest" hung over his head. Looking at the tired summoned creatures in silence, Jin Woo realized that Hongyo simply couldn't live without training. Clearing his throat once, Jin Woo said it was best to set clear rules from now on. Pokryong and Ramba's eyes lit up with excitement when Jin Woo declared that whenever someone learned a new skill, they would take a day off from training and throw a party. Hongyo looked straight ahead in a panic while Pokryong and Ramba celebrated behind him. He blurted out, "But Lord." Jin Woo faced Hongyo and reminded him that rest was also a form of training, while emphasizing that solidarity was also important. Hongyo's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, and he loudly agreed that solidarity was a form of training, while Jin Woo thought to himself that he was simple-minded. Hongyo's eyes suddenly lit up with excitement, and he loudly agreed that solidarity was a form of training, while Jin Woo thought to himself that he was simple-minded. The whole group gathered around the party while Jin Woo stood nearby. Even the summoned creatures were happily eating together. Pokryong's eyes went round as she looked at the fried chicken in her hand and shouted that it was delicious. Ramba happily took small sips from a tiny cup beside Hongyo. Looking at the party with a smile, Jin Woo checked on the others. A summoned creature gave a happy thumbs up while eating. Jin Woo quietly remarked that everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. Jin Woo turned toward the sunset, thinking that the minimum preparations were now complete. With a serious expression, Jin Woo decided it was time to enter the trial tower. The trial tower appeared as the game's endgame content, filled with treasures, rare equipment, and rewards far surpassing anything found in regular dungeons. But it came with a price. The narrator warned that the tower's brutal difficulty had claimed the lives of countless people, turning it into a literal graveyard for players. Sitting opposite Jin Woo in the meeting room, Ji reacted in surprise with a stunned expression. "What?" A drop of sweat rolled down her face as she asked if he was really planning to enter the trial tower. Jin Woo calmly confirmed it, saying he only intended to challenge up to the 10th floor this time. Remembering that even national rankers had never reached that place, she hesitated and said that was true. But images of fallen players appeared as she explained that countless people had sacrificed themselves trying to conquer that floor, and even the rankers who were lucky enough to return alive described it as hell. Facing Jin Woo across the table, she asked one last time if he was sure. He calmly replied that he had originally planned to start around this time anyway. Looking at Jin Woo sitting so calmly opposite her, she thought that anyone who could be that comfortable while preparing to step into such a dangerous place must certainly be God Jin Woo. Recalling that he had once climbed all the way to the 100th floor, she realized the first floor of the trial tower must be like child's play. A cloaked figure stood with his back to Jin Woo as a reminder that they had agreed to pretend they knew nothing until he voluntarily revealed it. Around the dining table, the group remarked that Jin Woo didn't like attracting attention and had even asked them to keep it a secret from his family. In a humorous scene, Ji enthusiastically declared that she would wait for Jin Woo, making him look clearly embarrassed. With a look of surprise, she heard Jin Woo say he had no plans to wear recording equipment this time. Jin Woo clasped his hands, listening when Ji asked about selling information. he firmly refused. The fairy mage and the swordsman appeared together as the narration explained that an EX rank was naturally necessary to conquer the trial tower. But communication skills were the next most important factor. The mute fairy threw a dramatic tantrum while Jin Woo sighed, saying that if his teammates couldn't talk, it would slow down progress. Ji rested her chin on her hand, deciding that besides information, there were still many other things to sell, and they should prioritize Jin Woo's wishes first. She agreed to let Jin Woo do whatever made him most comfortable. He thanked her for her understanding. Wringing his hands, Jin Woo hesitated, saying it might not be a worthy trade-off, but she leaned forward in her chair and asked if she could ask him for a favor too. Jin Woo repeated in surprise, "A favor?" She informed Jin Woo that the national representative selection tournament would take place in 2 months. Touching his chin in thought, Jin Woo remembered she was talking about the selection tournament. As images of gladiators and monsters appeared, Jin Woo confirmed it was the tournament used to select the national team to participate in the World League. A glowing shield appeared along with an announcement that those selected would have the right to participate in the tournament held at the end of the year. Crossing his arms, Jin Woo asked if he could participate in the tournament without belonging to an official guild or headquarters. Ji smiled across the table and explained that even though Yu Beck wasn't an official guild yet, with a nomination letter from a council member, he could still participate. A chibi-style scene appeared when she recalled Judge Cha Suk once suggesting Jin Woo should directly become a national representative. Jin Woo's expression turned serious as he said he could pass the selection round without much difficulty. The dark shadows of powerful opponents surrounded him when Jin Woo remarked that world rankers were still tough opponents with his current strength. A faint smile appeared on his face as he quietly added that this was only true for the present. Surrounded by intense flames, Pokryong appeared as Jin Woo pointed out that there were only 8 months left in the year. If she learned predation within that time, she could even take on world rankers. Ji beamed with excitement, saying that joining the national team would come with a lot of support. Jin Woo knew the government spared no expense for top players. Hearing this, he admitted he was looking for money to obtain another EX rank summon. Piles of towering summon scrolls appeared as Jin Woo immediately asked how much support a national representative actually receives. His eyes widened in surprise when he heard that those who perform exceptionally well can even receive priceless ultimate summon scrolls. Leaning forward with interest, Ji listened as Jin Woo quickly agreed to participate in the selection round. She could hardly believe he accepted so easily. The two shook hands to confirm the agreement. Smiling radiantly, Ji thanked Jin Woo for accepting. Still holding her hand, Jin Woo sat silently while she continued to smile at him. Across the table, he simply replied, "All right," while they both held on to each other in an enthusiastic handshake. A fire staff with a glowing red core emerged amidst swirling flames. While they both held on to each other in an enthusiastic handshake, a fire staff with a glowing red core emerged amidst swirling flames. Pokryong hesitated and replied, "Why, yes." A close-up of her eyes and sweat on her face revealed her obvious tension. Turning her back to Jin Woo, gripping her staff tightly, she nervously said there was something she needed to tell him. With both hands gripping the staff, she hesitated and began. Actually, looking away in embarrassment, she admitted that she liked going into dungeons with Jin Woo so much that she pretended it was hard to learn Yan. She apologized, saying surely the others also wanted to be with him. Jin Woo stood silently in the cave, listening to her confession. Seeing the tears in Pokryong's eyes, Jin Woo thought that rewarding her instead of scolding her might have made her feel guilty. He gently placed his hand on her head and said, "No, Pokryong." Smiling as he patted her head, Jin Woo told her not to blame herself so much. He was actually very grateful that she told him, and currently, she was the one he needed the most. Pokryong's eyes widened in surprise upon hearing his words. She listened as Jin Woo said it was only natural that he spent the most time with her. Facing each other, Pokryong hesitated and asked if that was really true. Jin Woo smiled and replied, "Yes." With a happy smile, Jin Woo began to explain the reason. Gripping her staff, Pokryong heard Jin Woo remind her that she was an EX rank summon. Jinwoo laughed as the other summoned creatures surrounded him, saying he also cherished the dungeon team, but they couldn't compare to an EX rank. Jinwoo laughed awkwardly as the others clamored, begging him to keep taking them into the dungeon. Jinwoo asked Pokryong if she was used to Yun yet. She confidently replied that it was enough for now. With a faint smile, Jinwoo said that was enough for today and declared that tomorrow they would immediately challenge the trial tower. A massive tower soared high into the dark sky as he announced their next destination, the trial tower.